Hello, hello. It is Zaide here, back with another episode of DramaQuest. Today's a special episode. It's sort of a double feature because the first part of the feature is pretty short. We're going to be talking about Ragefire and Phinigel. And with me is none other than Bobbybick, the officer from AOS, I think a longtime admin and contributor on Ala, and Twitch partner. Bobby, throwing it to you.
Hey, it's Bobbybick here. Yeah, we are going way back to the Ragefire days, which was kind of what kicked off the whole TLP craze. We had the Fippy server and combined back in the day, but I feel like ever since Ragefire came out, we've just been seeing TLP after TLP and the same players and the same drama coming up over and over again.
Yeah, Ragefire is where Holly basically reached the point where she was like, okay, we're going to do this annually. It's going to be almost like a seasonal thing because before that, it was always 3 to 5 years between servers, right?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say Fippy was almost like 7 or 8 years before Ragefire. It may not have been that long, but Fippy
Yeah.
kind of died off really hard. I want to say like after Secrets of Fade War, the server was pretty much a ghost town at that point. I was raiding in Dark Blood of Solisek Row, but like there was no one around to play with. And so, like, for years afterwards, just checking on the forum, seeing if there was a new TLP on the horizon. Then they finally announced Ragefire, and it was like, all right, time to get back into EverQuest for real.
Yeah, I remember it was so desperate for that kind of content that there was like three guilds that that did fake TLPs, right? Like on Test, on Tracking On, and all those other servers. So it was definitely desperate times for people who wanted that content.
Yeah, I kind of forgot all about that. Tracking On was even a server that existed at one point. It's nice
Yeah,
that they have Agents of Change now on live servers. So I guess if a guild did want to do a like fake TLP run, they could. But without the community around you, it kind of just feels pretty shallow, I would say.
yeah. Honestly, now that the AOCs exist, there's no reason not to just do it on a real TLP server. Back then you had reason to try to do it, the fake ones especially, because you got locked out of content if you weren't like the top 1% of your server. So, all right. So you were in Dark Blood. I actually didn't know you were in Dark Blood on Fippy. Were you an officer or just like a regular member?
I was just a regular member. That was where I met a few people that I would see on future TLPs, like UCAN, I believe,
Mm.
just finished leading Cornav to Live or something. And a guy named Terror M that I grouped with a lot that I believe was kind of close, ended up being close to Dima in the future servers.
Okay. So with the way those guys sort of leaned Dima-ish, how did you end up in Twisted Legacy on Ragefire?
It's actually just all happenstance. When Ragefire was announced, there wasn't as much organization, I would say, among anyone. They announced that the server was coming out, and I don't know how I went about this. I don't remember because it's been so long, but I ended up in a pre-made group with 5 other people that I'd never met before. One of which was a guy named Bling that I went on to play with for quite a few servers. At least we've been in the same guild a few times. I think he's stopped playing,
Now, Bling
but
has come up on the podcast like 3 other times, by the way.
yeah, he's a really good bard and a really good player. I was sad to see him kind of stop playing, but he taught me a few things that I otherwise would have never known. And
That's
I,
what people say. People say he's like the Sazabi of bards.
yeah, I consider myself pretty bard proficient, and so for him to teach me a few tricks, it was pretty kind of enlightening. But yeah, they were joining Twisted Legion. I had no plans on joining a guild, so we did our pre-made group. We like went on to test server. I think we leveled 1 to 50 twice, which
Wow.
was ridiculous. But
That is a lot of prep.
yeah, it was way too much prep. And then the group kind of floundered a little bit while leveling up. One person flaked out on us around like level 35 or whatever, but we all got leveled in the end. And since they were joining Twisted Legion, I just went ahead and joined Twisted Legion as well, knowing pretty much nobody in the guild or any of the history involved.
Do you remember who was the first group to 50 on Ragefire?
Uh, I don't know 100%, but I believe it might have been Sazabi's group. I know there was a Shadow Knight in the first group to 50 because they went and killed the first Phinigel, I want to say, and they used a Shadow Knight to tank it.
Oh, they just six manned them?
I think it was like that group, and then anyone that was above level 40 and could get to Phinigel to come down and help, because they didn't have mitigation of the mighty yet. It wasn't as big of a deal, but
Right.
yeah,
So
I
much
remember we
easier.
had a Shadow Knight tanking it.
Yeah, that's cool. Too bad they didn't realize you didn't even need a tank for Finnegal.
Yeah,
Okay.
old us. We didn't even bind in Finny's lair back then.
Oh man. So you did that launch. You hit 50. I assume you guys were in that first wave though, even though you weren't the first group.
Yeah, we were definitely 50 before the majority of people because we had done all that test prep. I had a ton of free time back then, so I was able to just to kind of know life it all the way up to 50 as a
Were
wizard.
you a rogue or were you?
I was a wizard on Ragefire,
Oh god.
and that was the only class I was really playing. I had a mage box that I used to farm like Chrono and Runny Eye with, but that was it. I only played the wizard on raids and groups for the most part.
So do you intentionally choose suboptimal DPS to try to like prove what they can do?
No, it wasn't really so much that. I just on combined server, I started as a wizard and I was really enjoying it, but I had to step away from the server and didn't get to play through it. So I thought when Ragefire came about, I wanted to have another chance at going through that as a wizard. So I made a wizard and I had a lot of fun, you know. Classic as a wizard is actually probably one of the better times for him because of you have good spells against at least Nagafin and Vox, which
Yeah.
is where the big DPS races come in. Sky is kind of a shit show, but we had a pretty good wizard group in TL that all like we were racing to T Flux the mobs in Sky. We made a good fun out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, wizards are really strong for DPS racing in classic on raid mobs. You got like Rend and shit that works on the gods too, right?
Yeah, yeah, you have
Yeah.
something
So
for everywhere.
did you make it to that first Nagafin kill?
I believe I did. I don't think I was level 50 at the time, so I probably wasn't contributing too much on my wizard, but I
So I
believe I was in
remember
the room.
I remember Nagafin was killed. Was that Nagafin Mage Walled?
Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
say.
And then he dropped a cloak of flames, right?
Then now that's too specific. I don't remember.
Okay, so I what I remember was that first Nagafin dropped a cloak of flames, and the group of people there put their heads together and decided to sell it and sold it for like 200 chrono.
I mean, if that happened, I don't remember it. It wouldn't have been as noted as I don't know impactful for me. I guess I was probably just more focused on getting to 50 and looking at the cool wizard shit that was coming up. I wasn't as hyper focused on Chrono at that point.
Gotcha. All right. So after you guys pretty much swept the classic rush there. I think at that time TL was like the first like really big guild that we had seen on TLPs, as at least in a while. Fippy and Vulek guilds felt a lot smaller, but TL had like a raid full and then a side raid, right, of people who couldn't fit in the main raid, which was like mind blowing.
Yeah, we
What
had
was
a
it like?
lot of people,
What was it like
and
in that atmosphere at that time?
I mean, it was kind of in classic on every TLP, you're going to have a lot of turnover. There's going to be a lot of people you never meet. And so I feel like in TL, especially in the beginning, it was just a new name, a new face every raid. And like there was not a lot of sense of guild camaraderie, I would say, because everyone was just kind of in it for themselves. Nobody knew anyone really except for the people that were coming over from Fippy. I certainly didn't know anyone. The wizards kind of got together and we had our own little wizard channel and we hung out in there. But like the rest of the guild, I had almost no interaction with.
Hmm. I mean, I think Mischief kind of felt the same in the beginning, right? Like it was just like a revolving door of people. We had like 500 people in that guild, and it felt like everyone was just in it for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone was monetarily incentivized on Mischief. I went into Mischief trying to be more community minded, kind of like Finnegal, but I
Picked the wrong guild.
yeah, yeah. After the same warrior had won 3 green scales in a row because nobody wanted to bid him up so he could buy his epic or whatever. It's like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna go full on Chrono Lord.
Oh, that's right. You became Green Scale guy, and they had to make a rule for you, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, no
Yeah.
more buying all of the items off of a dragon. You can only buy one of each.
All right. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on Mischief, but
Yeah, no worries.
after you guys were dominating for a while, you started getting some competition, right? I think APOC was your first big, competitor might be a strong word based on their results, but they were showing up and trying.
Yeah, Apocalypsis, I believe, was run by Doji and one other person, and they started showing up and kind of poop socking with us. Rosengard would occasionally show up during their Euro hours, but you know, we tried to kill the NPCs in a way that they would spawn outside of the Euro hours, which didn't
Yep.
always work, but it worked often enough that it kind of really wasn't a problem. And then there was a couple other times where, like mom and pop guilds would occasionally show up. Like I remember Sad Dragons, whatever their name was back on Ragefire, showed up at a Lady Vox that was due to spawn, and they were just kind of sitting there waiting. And our officers went and talked to them, and they told them that they were just practicing positioning or whatever the excuse was at the time. But they left pretty quickly once we came and just sat on top of them.
So you guys were not going to, you guys, your mentality was like not, no scraps, right?
No scraps. Everything had to be ours. There was I think the only thing that we would give up was Phinigels, but eventually that would get locked down as well by like me and Astral, but not for monetary purposes. We were just trying to get our epics.
That's crazy because what was he like 12 hours or 6 hours back then?
Uh, I want to say it was probably closer to 12 hours. I don't remember killing him more than twice a day.
Yeah. All right. So after some time with this, they come out with the mandatory rotation, right?
Yeah, so I guess enough people had complained to Holly and the EQ dev team, and so Jane, one of the officers from TL, went behind Thraka's back, I believe, and the rest of the officers and kind of negotiated this deal with Daybreak or whatever they were called back then to effectively, give everyone a chance at these mobs. And they had such weird rules involved where, if you didn't engage it within X time, then it moved to the next guild. And if that guild didn't show up, et cetera, et cetera, at some point it became free for all. And the rules were so arbitrary and obtuse that it pretty quickly fell apart because of it.
Yeah, I think we had probably like a month, maybe 5 weeks of rotation that was mandated on the servers before it
Yeah.
fell apart.
Yeah, and it came down to dumb stuff too. Like someone went up to Plane of Sky and cleared Island 1, and I think they got suspended for it because they didn't know there was a rotation in place. And I don't even know if they were part of a guild or just like a group of people that went up to Sky
That was
because,
actually that was on Lockjaw. That was OGC. That was Modest Man Dima's Guild. One of their apps went up to Plane of Sky shortly after joining and cleared Island 1 and got the entire guild suspended.
yeah, it happened on Ragefire too. I just don't remember who it was.
Yep.
But
And then so then one day they just come out of nowhere and say, "Hey, it's over." Now you weren't an officer in the Ragefire Guild at that time, right?
no, I was
So
just a member.
you didn't experience the joy of having to be part of these rotation discussions.
No, I didn't have to do any of that. All I had to do was show up. I would like stream the other guilds' attempts when it was their turn in the rotation.
Yeah.
Standouts to me were, I don't remember which guild it was. It might have been Apocalypsis, but they pulled Gorinair like all the way across Dreadlands to the um Burning Woods zone line, and they kept getting feared through the zone line. The whole guild was just wiping over and over, and it was funny to watch, but also like, we still had to sit there and wait for their time bracket to end.
Right. Yeah, that's honestly there's so many places to not pull Gornair in there. If you've ever pulled her near like the Karnor's Castle zone line, people get feared and they get stuck inside the geometry. Like you can get feared through a wall or through a pillar, and when the fear ends, you're just inside of it, stuck there.
Yeah, it seems like if you pull it near buildings and whatever, it doesn't seem to go well.
Yeah. I remember there was a guild leader from Ragefire that sent me an email from they had watched my YouTube videos and they sent me an email asking on a strategy to beat Inaruk. I think at least this was after Inaruk got MOTM because that was something we had to deal with in the middle of Classic. So it was a bit more challenging, but it was a woman guild leader and she asked me how to beat Inaruk and I was, like what can you say about a fight like that? And I heard that they wiped for like hours and hours and hours on Ragefire.
Um, I mean, I do remember streaming a guild wiping to interrupt for hours and hours, and I want to say it was Apocalypsis because I remember hovering over Doji's body multiple times after Interrupt killed him.
Oof.
It may not have been the same person. I know a lot of guilds kind of struggled with Interrupt and Kazakh Thul after they got Mitigation of the Mighty, but was Mitigation of the Mighty way back on Ragefire? Or did that start on Phinigel? I don't remember the timeline.
No, it started on Lockjaw and Ragefire, and if you remember, like the first, there was like multiple iterations of that. First, they did
Yeah,
MOTM, and
I
we could still mage wall
actually,
shit.
yeah, I actually do remember now why it came about because Toxin, one of the officers from TL, split off from the guild with like the guild's permission, basically to undermine the rotation.
Right, so you got
Uh,
two slots.
Yeah, so we'd have two slots, and Toxin basically just soloed the raids with an army of mages because it's Toxin. He just does that stuff. If you've ever played with him, that's right up his alley.
Yeah,
And I'm pretty sure he kept all that loot for himself. The whole goal of it was just to show how stupid the whole rotation was, and I think that's why Mitigation of the Mighty came into effect. Is they were trying to find a way to like stop people from being able to join the rotation with just 20 mages.
yeah. Well, I think that by the time the rotations got mandated, the top guilds on both servers didn't really need classic loot anymore, and it was just about eliminating the possibility for competition to get geared.
Yeah, that sounds right.
What did you think about those first mobs with MOTM? The first time you got to fight. I think Nagafin and Vox were like a month before Inrook and CT got it.
I think it was interesting. They were dying really quick before, and it kind of felt like our efforts were a little overkill and everything. By the time you're casting like two or three spells, the mob was dead, and that
Yeah,
wasn't particularly engaging. But the first few iterations of Mitigation of the Mighty also had their own issues. I don't remember exactly what the issues were in Classic, but I know like the Velious mobs regen to the point where they were pretty much unkillable. So there were a lot of tweaks that had to go into it to make it kind of workable. And like the VP dragons were ridiculous, like Drushk,
do
for
you remember
example,
that?
dual wielding.
Remember that Plane of Sky round one with it?
Oh my gosh, yeah, when like the queen bee would just sometimes spawn on island 1 and would quad for 1800 or whatever, which, just kills everybody instantly.
Yeah, yeah, it was crazy. So TL and Faceless, I think were the only two guilds. I forget if Dima's guild got it, but at least our two guilds were the only guilds that killed B in that really really OP state.
Yeah, I remember everyone had to have tons of disease potions and pretty much anything you could do to survive.
Yeah,
Like
toss bodies at it
prayers of life were a hot commodity.
and taking 0%ers.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got through all that. You had your Kunark launch. I remember you guys. You went for track. You probably were pretty much uncontested by this point. How did your first track go? Do you remember it?
So we had practiced track on test because back then we tried hard enough to actually go practice things. And I want to say the first track went fine because they still had mitigate. They didn't have mitigation yet, I want to say. And we pulled Tracken on to his banished spot, and I believe it was just Mage Walled. Yeah, we got. I don't remember what the go ahead was, but it was something like 10 mages to 53 or 54 or whatever. And then we just went into Track Slayer, and everyone sat behind a wall and watched Mage Pets slowly whittle down Trackanon's life.
I don't know, Bobby. I don't know. I remember you have this video of track on your YouTube channel.
Do I?
Yeah.
Was it from Ragefire or Phinigel?
I think it's the Ragefire because the Finical one, is pretty much already solved by then. But I think this was on your Decrew YouTube before you made like a second YouTube channel for Bobbybick, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the old one kind of had a weird name to it. And obviously I lost my name, so I had to start going by Bobbybick instead.
That was your wizard name, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I had gone by Decrew in EQ2 and on Ragefire and got name jacked on Finnegal's launch. And some dude sent me a tell and was like, how many chrono will you pay for this? I think I offered him 15 or something. And he said, it's not enough. And then
Oh,
never
geez,
logged in
fuck off.
again. So it's like, all right, dude, you don't want 15 chrono for my name? That's fine. I'll just go buy a different name.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's a ton.
No, that's how I remember the Ragefire tracking on, but I'm getting old. My memory's not as great as it used to be. I just remember not participating in the kill at all because my wizard was like 53 or 54, if that, at the time, and I didn't have like any way to really land spells on him without dying.
You know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe it was Mage Wald. Maybe it was the Finny one, which we'll talk about in a little bit. That was the one where it went south the first attempt, right?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what happened on Phinigel, but I know our first attempt went very poorly. If it was a combination of like, that might have been the attempt our warrior got blinded and just ran forward,
Well, that's a good one.
or it just got pulled into us, or it wasn't pulled close enough to the wall, or he gated. Any number of dumb things that could have happened.
And I think you guys only lost a handful of mobs ever, maybe even just like one or two that weren't rotation mobs the whole time, right? So you guys lost one Trachodon to Rosengard. They had like a clever strat. Do you remember that?
Yeah, Rosengard's, we, unbeknownst to us, had somehow gotten into Cebalus and formed up in the other pick in Track's lair and
Hmm.
left a tracker in the base pick or whatever. And when he spawned in, we bat phone it. We're forming up down there by Jugs where we normally would start. And then all of a sudden, there's like, 150 Rosengard picking over and just being dropped exactly where Trachodon is because, it didn't evac you back then.
Right.
And they just sniped the Trachodon out from under us. And it's like, oh, well, now one more thing that we have to keep an eye on. And, I'll
And I
give them
think that
credit for
created a
that.
second problem for you when they do that kind of thing because back then, remember base picks still had a pick cap. So when they pick their whole raid in, the rest of your force that's mobilizing can't even come into the zone now.
Yeah, that's correct. And we ran into that problem on Finnegal as well during Prophecy of Row, but that's a
Really,
long
still
time.
that late? Jeez.
Yeah,
Was that probably Theater of Blood?
that was actually Relic or whatever that zone is that has the Panther you need to kill for progression.
Yeah, Porthio.
Porthio, yeah. We got the first Porthio kill, and then because OGC tried to form like an alliance with all the other guilds to block us from POR progression. And then when we got the POR progression first, as a way to like come back at OGC, we tried to stop them from getting the second round. But OGC and their alliance of guilds like parked enough characters in Relic to get Porthio that we just couldn't zone anyone into the zone for like 3
Yeah.
days.
All right. So basically, to wrap up Ragefire here, um, you're in Kunark, staring down 6 months of Kunark content, right? Because you guys voted to unlock Kunark early, but they weren't going to do the same thing to unlock Velious early. And then they announce a new server, and at the same time, you guys were having some internal drama, right? What happened?
I actually don't remember what the internal drama was. It was probably related to the whole rotation. I don't know if Grisvok was an officer in that guild ever. If it was, he probably was starting drama with Raka. But yeah, when they announced Finnegal was coming, and that was shortly after or shortly before the vote failed to have 3-month expansions, and now we were going to have 6-month expansions. A lot of us did the math, and it's like, well, we can go join Finnegal, and we'll get to pop before them or Lucklin or whatever it is. And so, yeah, we'll have to redo Classic, but in the long run, it'll be worth it. And instance raids sounded interesting. Just be a way for us to get more loot as long as we're still getting the open world raids, which is pretty much what ended up happening. And yeah, Radian was much more like gung ho about starting Cascade. Like he was recruiting in general chat all the time,
I
and a
remember
lot of
seeing
us.
him in like every server recruiting.
Yeah, he was really, really into it. I thought he was kind of stupid at the time. It's like, why would we want to re-roll? We'll just stay on Ragefire. But I eventually got talked into going over when most of the friend group that I had made was going to be swapping over. Because, this was also after me and Astral had spent the last couple months just sitting in Phinigel's lair, killing him over and over to get our epic pieces. Like, it took so many kills for whatever reason to get both of our items.
I mean, that's how we felt, right? Like on Lockjaw, we had just finished 6 months of Classic. It was like the first 2 weeks of Kunark when they announced Finny, and I was like, fuck no, dude, I'm not doing another 3 months of Classic on top of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you look at it now, it's been almost 10 years. Ragefire is still not at live, right? So the choice is obvious looking back.
Yeah, that I'm really glad that Ragefire had to suffer for them to finally get rid of player polling, because most of the players that vote don't really understand what makes a server healthy and like what's going to be better for them in the long run. They
And
vote.
yeah, I mean, you have players who like will intentionally sabotage the vote, like come over from the sister server to make your server worse, blah blah blah.
Oh yeah, we definitely did that on
Or
Fippy, I want to say.
live players who will vote for the Mayong server instead of a good TLP server, so they don't lose population.
Yep.
All that kind of stupid stuff. Yeah, voting is terrible. EverQuest players are stupid.
Yeah.
Um, Now Thraka didn't come with you guys. He was the leader of TL pretty much the whole time on Ragefire, but something happened, and I remember on FOH there was a lot of drama about it, about him like potentially taking the guild bank or whatever. Do you have any insight into that?
Uh, it's been so long that I don't really remember the specifics. I do remember an accusation that Thraka had like absconded with the majority of the guild bank when the officers said that they were going to go to Phinigel and he didn't want to go. But that's could be my memory acting up. It could be me misremembering Thraka instead of Mabu. Because, this is a running theme, it seems, on a lot of servers, is guild leader is basically, it's my party. You guys can leave if you want, but I'm going to keep all the presents, sort of deal.
Right, right.
Yeah, Ragefire is where my disdain for Mabu started, and it was such a like dumb way, but it goes on to this day, and I guess I was right in the long run.
Can you tell us about that?
I mean, it's nothing big. It was all about killing Phinigel. Me, Astral, and Mabu were there killing him and farming him for our epic pieces. I think Mabu was playing a mage, Astral was playing a mage, and I was playing a wizard. And Mabu got the first staff of elemental mastery water, and said he'd be back for the next kills and make sure everyone gets their pieces. Never showed up again. So it's like, all right, I know what this guy's about. And yeah, he's never let me down since then.
Gotcha. I remember on Agnar launch, you and Astral had a guild that you were leveling up in called like Mabu's Next Guild or something like that.
Yeah, we love poking fun at Mabu
Yeah.
because everyone needs a villain, and he fulfills the role so well.
I hear he is leading the top guild on Oakwind right now.
Well, that's unfortunate for them. I'm sure they'll eventually learn why he has the reputation he does. But I'll say this: he can lead a guild effectively. He just is a very selfish individual that will do whatever he needs to at the end to make sure that he gets what he wants.
Gotcha. Strong statement there. Did you play with him after this at all?
Unfortunately, I played with him on, gosh, what was that server? It might have been the start of CeeLo. I want to say that he was in.
Oh yeah, he was. Yeah, he was an
Yeah,
officer.
yeah, he was part of that, and I think Grisvok was too, and I don't remember who it was that I told him. But I'm like, why do you have Mabu in your officership? You know goddamn well what he's gonna do and how this is gonna end. And they're like, we know. It's just better to have him on our side than against us. Basically, is what it came down to.
I mean, I've had to do that math before as a guild leader, right? And I
Yeah.
think both of you guys were right in that. Like, look at what happened, right? Mabu doxed Grisvok, changed the Amtrak website to Grisvok's face and a bunch
Hmm.
of things that he said and his place of employment. So when you went to their website, you saw all that shit.
Yeah, that was certainly an interesting way to get back at someone, but definitely par for a lot of the EQ players and the drama they like to do.
Yeah. All right. So now you guys are forming up on Finnegal. You were gonna go as Cascade, but the name changed instead to Asylum of Shadow. How'd that happen?
That's one that I don't know either. So the full name is the Asylum of Shadows.
Oh,
It was
right,
always
right.
abbreviated to AOS, but like even half of the members would forget that we had the word "the" at the beginning of our name. But I think it just came about because maybe Cascade was taken on another server. Maybe this was like a compromise between, um, gosh, what was his name? Who formed Cascade?
Radian.
Radian and Grisvok and the others that were the officers back in Classic. I wasn't a part of that.
Okay. So when did you become an officer in AOS?
I started. I don't think I was technically an officer in Luckland, but I started tracking mobs for them and like uh, sending out bat phones in Luckland, and I would like form up the raids, and then Kellen or Astral or occasionally Grisvok or one of the other officers who I can't remember would actually do the leading of the raid. But my job was basically just keeping an eye on the zone, sending out a bat phone as long as it spawned within, specific hours, or if enough mobs were up, or if another guild was starting to head towards it. It wasn't until Pop that I would actually form raids up myself and lead them in TeamSpeak or Ventrilla or whatever we were using at the time.
Gotcha. I'm surprised you weren't an officer sooner than that because, yeah, I mean, you're just a player who takes initiative on things, and you have such a huge wealth of EverQuest knowledge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was. I just didn't want to do it. Basically, is what it came down to. I had other things that I wanted to spend my time on, like farming Lotazol for most of Velious, or staying up late watching YouTube. I didn't really want to have to deal with all the drama of my fellow guild members. I wanted to just play the game.
It sounds like you made the smart move, I guess, for a few expansions at least.
Yeah, I don't think I would have lasted too long with the classic through Velious raid leading. That was a little much for me. The pop stuff was a lot, but it was much more manageable because there were less zones you had to keep an eye on, and mobility was a lot easier.
Yeah, I think like leading on Mischief, basically now from Classic through SOF with the size of the guild at various points has been like both my favorite and my worst experience in EQ.
Yeah, I don't really understand how anyone does it for that long. And if you're doing like GDKP, like Greed is Good and Treasures are doing, that's just another layer of work on top of how much work officers already have to do. That I know some of them are a little financially incentivized because they're taking some chrono off the top as like a tax or whatever, but it would have to be a lot of chrono for me to consider doing that. And at some point, it's
Yeah,
like, how many chrono do you really need?
right. Now, Callan is still leading. What are they called now? Treasures on Mischief, and they're still a really good guild. They had like a bad period, but then they had a big resurgence in the last couple expansions. So I think they're like actually two splitting all the content now, which is kind of crazy. Because in Pop and God, it felt like the guild was almost like toast.
Hmm. Yeah, I was gone from the game at that time. When I left in Velious, it was still going pretty darn good, but that was also under the original leadership. Um, who started Greed is Good again? I can't remember his name. I know he was a big
Crim.
Crim. Yeah,
I mean, to be honest though, it's hard to have a guild that dies before Pop. You know what I mean? If you're like halfway competent, especially like when we advertised it before the server launch, we had so many people. Like just the inertia is going to carry you through the open world eras.
yeah. We had so many players and so many people interested in farming chrono with us that we were never short on bodies. And Greed
Yeah.
is Good.
Now after Pop ended and gigs stopped winning expansions, I don't know what Kellen did internally, but he must have done a lot of work, and whatever it was super successful. Because yeah, the guild seems great. We're all pretty much on good terms now, I think. But yeah, so kudos to those guys. But for now, if you can, I would love for you to just kind of go narrative mode and tell us the story of Phinigel.
All right. Well, you're gonna have to deal with my old brain trying to remember most of it. So
I'll
Finnegal,
poke here and there.
yeah. So we had the Finnegal launch, and I was somehow drafted into the group that would go on to like get to 51st. I believe that was Grisvok, me first, a enchanter whose name I'm struggling to remember because I think he got to 50 and then like immediately quit.
Was it Sagnid?
No, it wasn't Sagnid. He was in a different group. This guy,
Okay.
this he like leveled up his enchanter with us. He was great as his enchanter, but then like just vanished off the face of the earth. And I want to say he was even the first person to hit 50 on the server. It
Oh,
might
that
have
was
been first.
Mwapo then, right?
Okay, no, yeah, that was right. Mappo was one of them, and then Grisvok I think was boxing a mage. So I'm trying to like count on my fingers to make sure I have everyone, but that's most of it. And yeah, so Grisvok was boxing a mage, and I was playing a mage. It was basically just a group designed to hit 50 as fast as possible. Like Enchanter,
Right.
Cleric, I think 4 mages. It might have been 3 mages and like a wizard or something, but it was designed to go fast. Um, and yeah, we hit up all the usual haunts. We ended up in Ocean of Tears. Actually, that's not true. We actually went to Kazakh Thul,
Oh, that's
which
weird.
yeah, it was really weird. It was really annoying. I think
This was
we
the route that you guys used. Did you do the Tox start? Kara Island
that one's hard to remember. I believe we did because we didn't
to
want to
avoid the
get stuck in the
squeeze.
crowd. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we eventually traveled all the way across to go to Kazakh Thul, but we timed it so that we were going to Kazakh Thul like 12, maybe like not 12, probably like 16 hours after launch. And the idea there was we were going to go to a lower traffic zone with less people. That way we could just, take rotation sleeping basically. Like everyone was going to sleep for 3 hours in shifts. And we were just going to
Mm.
hammer it out in Kazakh because we figured we could be down 1 or 2 players there in the maze area and do just fine.
You weren't
And
worried about healers?
no, not in the
Like,
maze area.
okay.
I think there's less that spawn over there, and we were just kind of like baby pulling in. Like we weren't going super fast at that point. We were basically resting in preparation for Ocean of Tears.
Now,
And
did you guys expect to be the first group?
I didn't. I don't know if like Grisvok and First and Mwapo had any dreams of being the first group, but we were just trying to get to 50 as fast as we could.
And the EXP, did it end up being way slower than you expected?
It was horrendous at the start of Phinigel. Like I think if you go way back on the forums, there's probably a post from me comparing the XP rates of Phinigel pre and post buff. And it was a pretty significant buff to XP when they finally went back and like adjusted Phinigel's rates, because the first few weeks were just god awful. I don't remember what the final time was, but I think it took us like a week to get to 50, or
Yeah.
like 3 or 4 days, whatever it was. And that was going pretty hard, a little suboptimally because, we hadn't recycled through 7 TLPs at that point and didn't know better.
Right. It's funny, like hearing you describe the play, and I'm like, man, if you could put this group like against a rushing group from the last 2 years, you know what I mean? It sounds like it would probably get smoked. But with that EXP rate, it probably was just the smart play, right? To be able to sleep while you play that whole time, because people don't even realize, like Cornav later would come out and they were like, oh, it's got the Finny EXP rate. And people are like, oh man, Cornav's so bad, but it had the Finny buffed EXP rate. So like Finny was the slowest TLP grind of all time at launch.
I believe that is true. Yeah. Ragefire was absolutely faster. Like I played a wizard on Ragefire in a group with like a monk, a rogue, a shaman, a shadow knight. Like it was not a suboptimal group, or it wasn't an optimal group, and leveling up didn't feel that bad. Like it wasn't fast, but it didn't feel like a slog once you hit 30, 40.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did Kazakh Thul. We had an enchanter that was like occasionally running over and charming NPCs off of us and then dragging them across the zone to kill them, which I thought was kind of creative. It was also really annoying. And then after that, we went on to Lava Storm and did the lava spinners back when they weren't nerfed yet. And then went on to Ocean of Tears for like 2 days. And that was probably the closest I've ever come to just like fully quitting EverQuest. Just floating around in the water, casting Levitate over and over because we didn't have a bard, and just killing sharks for. We killed sharks for like a full day, and then we went on to kill lizards for like another day. But the sharks was the worst because you can't see anything. You're just running around the water, pet attacking stuff under the water. And we did more sleep shifts during that time, and it just felt like it went on forever.
So how did the sharks work? I remember sharks was kind of like a big thing in the meta that came out on Finny, right?
Yeah, I guess they changed them at some point back in the day to where there's just all these sharks south of the Cyclops Island, and they don't have that much HP. They don't do a lot of damage. They give pretty good XP for their level, and they spawn. It's like 30 of them at a time. They respawn fairly fast, so it's kind of just running around killing these sharks that are deep down in the water.
Sounds miserable. Honestly, every time you grind an Ocean of Tears, it's the worst part of any grind because it's like you fall asleep like doing the same two button presses over and over in a circle.
Yeah, I'm really glad the shark meta didn't survive, and we have plenty of pick zones of places like Guck and Solby and what have you, so that you have alternatives to it that feel more like you're actually playing the game versus just pet attacking something that you can't even see.
So I found your old forum post, by the way, and you said you tied for the second/third place 50 in your group with Akensis. I'm guessing that was the enchanter.
It might have been, or
And total time played was 4 days and 13 hours, 16 minutes. So 4 days, 13 hours, 16 minutes played time to get 50.
yeah, that sounds right.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's there's a little bit of travel time in there, running around between zones and waiting for people to wake up, but that's almost probably at least 4 days of that was just grinding NPCs the entire time. And we had alts ferrying spells out to us. Grisvok had plenty of laptops to manage that, so
Yeah.
there wasn't a lot of downtime.
So yeah, it's
The
like
only
100
reason
hours.
yeah, Mwapo had a couple hours where like we all agreed we would just take like a 5 hour or a 6 hour real sleep before as a reset, I think, before we started the lizards. And instead of doing that, I think Mwapo went to Wrath Mountains and killed hill giants, and that's why he hit 50 a little bit before everyone else.
Yeah. All right. So you guys, you're all 50 now. What's the next? Where's the story go from here?
At that point, it's kind of just waiting for, I think, a tank and a couple more healers to get leveled up so we could go kill Phinigel, because we weren't creative enough to kill it with our caster group at that point. I know some of us went to like Wrath Mountains to farm plat. It's kind of just like, every man for himself at that point. Go farm some chrono, wait for a raid. I think
Hmm.
I went to Kino's Catacombs with my mage and killed guards for a while, sold their swords. RIP. Thanks, TLP
Right.
forums.
Recently nerfed.
I like how people are like, yeah, I'm the one that discovered that back on Cornev. I started farming those. It's like,
Oh, God.
sir, this is ancient farming. You want to talk to me
Right.
about farming? Talk to me about like Panial guards.
You're right. So it looks like you guys killed Finny with that group, by the way. Or at least Finny died the same day that you guys hit 50 on December 15th. And then Nagafin didn't die for 5 days later.
Yeah, I think that was because we didn't have enough healers. I think we got like it's probably another Shadow Knight came and like one cleric, and we just went and killed Finnegal with our group plus them.
Mm.
And then we had to wait for the rest of the guild to get leveled up to go fight Nagafin, because mitigation of the mighty Nagafin does require more than a few bodies to kill.
Right, right. If he's got dual wielding daggers, he's a blunder.
Yeah, yeah. We actually lost one Nagafin that I remember. I want to say it was on Ragefire to the ROI TLP guild. We
Reign
pulled
of
him.
insanity.
Yeah, we pulled him way too early. We're like the meme for years was there's five ROI in zone, pull it, because that's exactly what happened with Nagafin. Like our guild wasn't there, we weren't formed up, buffs weren't done, and we just pulled Nagafin because ROI had like a couple people in the zone scouting,
Yeah.
and we ended up wiping to Nagafin at like 5% of his HP. All of our DPS died, and then he just starts running. and the only people left are like a couple clerics and a couple
Oh,
druids, and so ROI just comes in and just sweeps up because Nagafin's not even attacking back. Like any DPS could just kill him at that point.
right. Yeah, it's terrible. Like that thing that mobs do, where like they're in the running percent of HP, but if someone on their target list is low HP, they won't run.
Yeah,
They'll fight it out.
and
Now,
we
and
had
that was also
so much
back.
melee eating AEs.
That was back before people learned the new tech of cheesing these dragons just right into the dirt, where they like don't do any AE at all, right?
Yeah, we weren't using line of sight as a creative way to avoid them AEing. Like we actually had to dodge and all that, and people weren't really used to it yet.
Yeah, I feel like that the AE cheese didn't come out until Cornav or Air Dune is definitely when it got streamed. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
it
didn't.
was you. You streamed it on Air Dune, right? You were in TB early.
Yeah, I no wait. Which one was Aerodune? No, I didn't do it on Aerodune. Aerodune, I played just a couple mages and a druid to farm chrono in Kina's catacombs. Actually, it
I
was
thought you were
wait.
Pally.
No, that was Agnar. Too many
Yeah, you're
A
thinking of
names.
Agnar.
Yeah, Aerodune, I was on Rudy, and yeah, I streamed I think a few dragons where I was just spamming J boots around the corner, and
Yep.
there
So
we go.
they nerfed J boots, but you could basically still do it.
Yeah, as long as you like build enough aggro. I think we were doing it with Shadow Knights on Mischief. Just sit there, harm touch it, throw a bunch of dooming darknesses into it, and then have pets taunt, and you just taunt off the pets, and you can just daisy chain aggro all the way up to max that way.
Right, yeah, critical pet taunts work. I think there's a spot where you can run in Nagafin's lair where it bugs out his pathing. And if you run in a circle, he'll never be able to reach you. And while you're doing that, you just click a Sodi 1,000 times, or you have like a paladin do it or a shadow knight do it, and you just hit him with like a low level buff 1,000 times.
Mm.
And then when Nagafin comes in, one taunt gives you infinite aggro, and you just stand behind the pillar. You know what I mean? And that's it.
Yeah, we use that on a lot of things on Mischief, especially when we were small manning content with like our kind of like a side raid.
Yeah, yeah. Your side raid that was like two officers killing open world stuff, not bat phoning it.
Yeah, but it was outside of bat phone hours, so it was okay.
Yeah. All right. So you guys got that 50. You waited for a few more people. You eventually knocked down the dragons. Mabu wasn't in this guild, was he?
No, no, I think Mabu went to whatever the opposite of Phinigel was at the time. I don't.
Pinnacle didn't
Well,
have a sister server.
didn't it?
No, it launched solo dolo. It had a really weird launch date. Remember, it launched in December.
Yeah, it was like December 15th or something, December 12th. I don't know.
Yeah, and
No,
that
I don't remember Mabu being there. If he was being real sneaky in a different guild. Wasn't
probably.
on my radar.
I know Thraka was playing, I think, a shaman or a bard early on, incognito with Dima, right?
He might have been. I haven't talked to Thraka that much. Like me and Thraka have no bad blood as far as I can tell, but we definitely run with different group of people most of the time. He'll occasionally pop in and like we'll go to a few raids together and we'll talk, but then he like vanishes off the face of the earth and I don't know what he's doing at that point.
Yeah, I think right now he might be an officer in RI on Oakwind. Him and Aleda both.
Hmm. Yeah, I know him and Aleda usually travel together.
Yeah. All right. So Classic. Was there anything notable that happened during Classic? The rest of Classic?
Whew. Classic on Finnegal. That was so long ago.
At
We
that time, there was a question of whether Dima was going to win with OGC against AOS. Right. Like I remember there was a lot of trash talk leading up to the launch.
Yeah, OGC didn't end up really being much of a threat until Luckland. They would occasionally show up for DPS races in Entov, but didn't really seem to get their feet under them until kind of the end of Velious going into Luckland. And I think that's partly probably why we lost the Luckland race is until that point, they hadn't really been much of a competition other than like contesting the occasional open world spawn.
So you guys just kind of slept on them a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We definitely didn't plan well enough going into Luckland. We didn't test the raids as well as we should have. We didn't try low manning Vexthal at all. We kind of just planned to go in there, I think, with 54 or even 72. And I think OGC went into Luckland with, or into Vexthal with like 24 or something. And just slow rolled through the whole zone. And, we were just trying to play catch up at that point.
Yeah. Now, I guess it's important to note that, like, basically after Velious, every time that you guys went to an expansion, it was the first time that expansion ever had been done on a server with AOCs, right? And Luckland is kind of a big factor in how it changes the dynamic because, like, you can't lock down Emp and you can't lock down glowing orbs. So, like, you could go 20 split, evolve Burrower, and pretty much get your guild ready for VT.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Insanity Crawler and stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we got shit on for quite a while because we bat phoned an Insanity Crawler in Akiva Ruins. And it's like, wow, you're bat phoning for one dumb mob that doesn't drop any real loot. But I still stand by the decision to do it because at the time, what we needed more than anything was glowing orbs, and we were just lacking in that department.
Yeah.
We needed shards, but the shards are useless if you don't have orbs for the people getting the shards.
Yeah.
And we didn't plan like splits in a way that would optimally get them out for us. Like I think we did a lot of splits for Lucia, but not for the other stuff.
Did you split LCM more just because of the mask?
I don't think so. I think we were after something, her other drops. I don't
Gotcha.
know if we even saw a mask.
Yeah, it's super rare. But before that, you guys had Kunark launch, right? And Kunark, you're tracking on. Well, you know what? Tell the server first Kunark story if you can.
Which server first, Kunark story?
Kunark launched to Fardar death.
Boy, so yeah, the server launched Kunark. We went to Veneral Sathir first, I believe. We were all formed up in Butcher Block, rode the boats over, ran straight to Veneral, and I want to say Veneral proceeded to beat our asses. And then we either killed him or we decided just to go level up and get our warriors to the point where they could have defensive discs, both to retry Veneral if we did wipe or to go kill Trakenon. So everyone kind of split up. A lot of groups went to Sebelis. A lot of groups went to Chardok. Believe we may have had a big keying guild event where everyone went to Track's Teeth for a while and we killed hunters and foragers to make sure everyone had idols. But that sounds like something we probably did when we were actually ready to go fight Trakenon. And then the Trakenon fight itself was difficult. It, I don't, we might have had like one or two 60s at that point, but the rest of the guild was like in their 50s. And Trakenon's AE hits really hard.
Oh yeah,
Especially when, people aren't, I don't know, dodging AEs correctly because the mob isn't positioned correctly. If I
right.
have
Yeah,
I wish I had watched the video if I actually have one because I don't remember the first kill that much. We killed him so many times that they all kind of bleed together. Oh, here it is. Is this the first
So
one?
with this video, the thing I noticed is, like, if you look when you target Trakenon before anybody rushes in, he's at 57%, which reminded me in Velious on Ragefire and Lockjaw, like you mentioned, the the regen rates on mitigation of the mighty mobs were so crazy that you couldn't kill them. They were totally unkillable. Then they overfixed it, and you remember MOTM mobs basically would not regenerate.
Yeah, I do remember that. I think that's how we ended up getting this kill is we had already wiped to him once and he
Yep.
regenerated so slow that we were able to engage him at about half health and then just kind of brute force him down.
Now I don't see anything in the video that shows us like what level you guys were, but
Yeah, I'm trying to look.
I think TrekCon's red even at 60, right?
Yeah, I don't have any discs at this point, so I'm guessing I must be below 56 or I'm just too lazy to have bought them. Like I have Fearless Discipline, but I don't see Duelist or Deadeye or anything.
Yeah, I think you're probably 51. You guys probably came here right after VS or something.
It's very possible. I I was so certain that we had a warrior with defensive though, but Yeah, I wish there was like a little clock or something in the UI so
I
we could get an
know.
idea as like when this was recorded, or if I had timestamps on. I don't. This might have been before timestamps were a thing without MacroQuest too.
Right. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think they were a thing. But yeah, even during this video, you could just see people getting evaporated like Thanos snap style from this AE uh, during that 20% push.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now, and it seems like every other round he's just finding someone else that hasn't been healed in a while and taking him out.
Yeah.
I just see all the mage pets going wild.
And I can see all your piercing for 1 damage. Good rogue DPS back then.
Yep. Classic rogue, 1 point of damage, best in slot classic gear. Yeah, no, tracking on, went all right. Then we had to do the keying for Veeshan's Peak, which was god awful back then. If you think it's bad on current
Yeah.
TLPs, try doing it when, the whole server is going after one piece that spawns in Kazora every, what was it, like 18 hours, 16 hours?
Something like 6. I think it might have been 6 or 12 hours at that time. But yeah, I mean, it was brutal. And
Yeah.
the Goblin in LOIO was a DPS race, and that was a 6-hour spawn.
Yeah, there was no good pieces of the key. And like Ancient Jarasath, I remember my kill took like 30 hours or whatever to get mine. So,
Yeah, definitely the worst.
I mean, when you think about one person spending 30 hours to get one part of the key, it just goes to kind of point to why it took so long for us to get through Veeshan's Peak on Phinigel, because there's just no way to key up fast.
Right. And I mean, you guys still had this low leveling, you know what I mean? So it took forever for you guys to level up to 60.
Yeah.
What was there was another issue. Oh, you guys pioneered charm gating on this server with a vial of swirling smoke.
Yeah, I had the charm gate to get my epic done on my
Yep.
rogue. I got to 60. I kind of had nothing else to do, so I finally started doing my epic. And I go out to Lake Wrath, and there's, like 10 rogues sitting there that are level 50, 51. And, I'm like, why aren't you guys leveling instead of just sitting here trying to do this hand into Eldrith? And, obviously that doesn't go anywhere because they can do their epic if they want. I'm not their mom.
Yeah.
But I'm 60. I have nothing else to do. My elitist mentality is like, I'm going to get the next turn in. Fuck these guys. So I I think I ran my mage over whatever box caster I had, bound them by like the arena zone line, charmed it with puppet strings, and then just gated it with the vial and brought Eldrith over to me. Did
Yep.
my turn in and went on to finish my epic. Obviously got some hate tells from it, but what are you gonna do? It's a
Right. I
race
mean,
between everyone. It's kind of, some people are using MacroQuest, some people are using puppet strings.
right. Just got to do what you have to do back then. I remember puppet strings being really big for Jade Chocodile prods too.
Yeah, it was back when Howling Stones was actually a desirable zone to go to.
Right before the Howling Spectre nerf. Is that what it was?
Um, yeah, Crypt Spectre, or I
Crypt
think is
Spectre.
his name. Yeah, Necros and Chanters would just spend all day in there selling power levels, power leveling others. It's good times. I got a few power levels in there. I think I even borrowed somebody's Necro so I could level my own characters. And oh my gosh, that was like the strongest I've ever felt on a TLP server. It's like a Shadow Knight in Omens of War right after they get their 2.0. It's like, okay, well, I can solo half the game now.
So I mean that's pretty much a wrap, right? Nothing super notable from Vishan's Peak once you guys get in there.
No, it's Veeshan's Peak. It is what it is. You get there, you kill the dragons, and you're like, why did we even bother coming here?
Yeah.
Faradar, awesome. Because I think we still had focus effects back then, so
Yeah.
all those improved healing items were neat. Mana pres, whatever it is.
Every
So
time you
that,
drop a crown of Ryle, one person retires from the server.
yeah, it kind of felt crappy on my rogue because there wasn't a lot of items in there that I really wanted. I was kind of just saving my DKP for Velious at that point.
Yeah, you just get your robe and then hang out.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember that when they first did the AOCs of Trachanon in the AOC version, it was still the old Trachanon, no buff.
I don't remember that actually. I remember the AOCs would occasionally like send you to the wrong Kino zone where like there was a
Oh yeah,
Trachanon.
baby. South Kanos with Trachanon at the docks.
Yeah, that was a weird one. It's like I know South Kinos is the zone the game will send you to if there's like a big error and it doesn't know where else to send you. It'll send you to 00 on the South Kinos docks, which is like the ultimate safe location. But for some reason the AOC was also still spawning all the NPCs that would normally go into Sebelis. So the entire population of Sebelis was at 00 in South Kinos on the docks. So as soon as you loaded in, you were just beat to death by 200 NPCs plus Trachanon.
Yeah. I remember for the first week on Finny, Trachanon didn't have MOTM in in the AOC, and it was like a big secret. And I vaguely remember people being like, "Yeah, you're not allowed to stream our AOC like Sebelis raids for that reason." Not you,
Mm.
but like I think I joined Finny and played with Magicus, Imperialist Magicus, or whatever, for a month or two.
I kind of remember MIM. No, I didn't know that the mitigation wasn't affecting the AOCs. I don't know why we wouldn't have done the AOC, or I may have just blocked it out.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't a big factor for you guys, right? Because you were killing track every 2 days or so,
Yeah, we had plenty of teeth. The only reason we were really killing him was for BPs and to stop other guilds from getting more teeth.
right? And they had not nerfed him; they like buffed him to carry more teeth. Do you remember that? But they had to sacrifice a BP slot. So track, who had for 20 years dropped 2 BPs and some teeth, now dropped 1 BP in a pile of teeth.
I don't remember that. I do remember them increasing the drop rate of teeth, though.
Yeah, when they did that, he lost a BP.
Yeah, I didn't do a lot of those raids back in the day. So going pretty much everything after Kunark on Phinigel was new content to me. Like I didn't raid Velious or Lucklin or Pop in Era on any server before that.
Mm. So you guys get into Valius. How's the guild doing at that point? Still huge?
Yeah, still huge. I don't remember exactly what happened. And oh yeah, actually I do remember what happened during the Phinigel Velious launch. That was big drama in and of itself because one of the officers at the time was a woman named Yukina, and the server message for Velious opening went off at like 5 a.m. or something, a week before it was supposed to launch, or two
Oh
weeks or
yeah.
something. So, she just wrote it off as a bug. And I guess there was just no one else online at the time to even like, speak up and be like, yo, is that real? Let's go check it out. And so we were like 5 or 6 hours late to the start of Velious. And I think we missed a few Kale mobs as a result of it. I believe we still got Avatar of War and maybe Tormax, but I know there was a big like leadership discussion about that, and I think that ended up getting Yukina dismissed as an officer
Was
because of
Yukina the
it.
wife of Bumumgar?
No, that was I think someone else. I might also be confusing my female clerics in the guild because there's always been so many of them. She did. The officer at the time in Fingal did have a husband in the guild that played a ranger. I just
Mm,
don't remember what his name was. I'm like looking through my Steam friends list to see if I can spot him. Yeah, it was Yukina. I don't remember what Bumumgar's wife's name was, but that was someone different.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah,
So
so
you was
yeah, so go.
NTOV still untouched though?
I believe so. I think we maybe someone had gotten into East TOV and started killing like halls of testing drakes or whatever, but it was more just the fact that the Velius had been out for hours and we just hadn't even mobilized at all. Like that
Right.
was
People like didn't take
the
time
big
off
drama.
work.
Yeah, that too. We weren't ready for it at all. There was, still testing to be done on test. Like teaching people the positioning on some fights, and it just didn't get done because we thought we had another week or whatever it was before the server was going to launch. And I think this ended up getting Luckland delayed for us was the official reason, but like the real reason was they didn't have Mitigation of the Mighty done.
Mm. So you guys woke the sleeper. Do you know how many times you like farmed ST before you woke it?
No, I don't. It was probably like I don't want to just guess. I would say probably somewhere between 5 and 8 full cycles before we woke it. And we woke it because other guilds said they were going to wake it, is what it came down to.
Yeah.
And then we ended up being the bad guys because we woke it, because that was the narrative that got spun. So for a while there, we also had to be careful. We were bound in Kale, and it wasn't uncommon for guilds just to train our binds as a way of getting back at us for waking the sleeper.
Yeah, I remember seeing a ton of videos of people just training all the AOS folks like randomly.
Yeah, I got a few videos and a few people suspended as a result because got to do something. Just tell people that you can't just train us over and over.
Right. Now you guys used a character named Satoshi Bot for this, for the yellow text.
Yeah, that was the people that know that that's not actually Satoshi would know, but it was just a way to kind of fuck with Dima a little bit by making the whole server think that OGC woke him up. I think Satoshi Bot was also in the guild Original Gangsters Club.
Yes,
So
yeah.
so if you're not looking real close, it looks almost real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. Was anybody upset? Was that Grisvox's idea? It sounds like a Grisvox
Yeah,
idea.
it's definitely Grisvox's idea. Grisvox, like I think somewhere in his house, there's probably a picture of Dima with like darts around it or something.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if they ever got over their bad blood. I want to say they made up on CeeLo and maybe just kind of like came to a mutual understanding. But yeah, on Velious, it wasn't uncommon for Grisvox to get himself suspended, just like shouting obscenities to Dima and OOC or in Shout, or just like training them, knowing full well that like people are recording it and he's going to get suspended.
Yeah, it's crazy. Grisvox is kind of unique in that way. Like he's a player who apparently is competent enough to lead guilds and plays pretty well, but he also cannot stop himself. Like he's like frothing, you know what I mean? He's like rabid sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Vexthal, he just they were I think getting ready to fight AHR, and he just bombed them with half the zone, just straight up in there, and it was awesome to watch because I think they posted the video on the TLP forum so everyone could see it, and they're like, "Yep, that looks like par for the course for Griswold. See you in a week, buddy."
Yeah, that was like Darkwind that he was bombing, I think, right? It was some Euro guild, not
Yeah,
OGC.
yeah, it might have been Darkwind.
Yeah, I remember that. Now it's funny because I remember the first time we ever DPS raced on Cello. I remember we went to Kale and you guys batphoned Kale, and we're all standing there at the Awakening Land zone line. And you're like, "Hey, be ready. Griswold gets a little crazy when he wins a DPS race or something." Right? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And then proceeds to lose 2 DPS races and leaves quietly.
Yeah, definitely one of those things where loves to rejoice when he wins, but when he loses, it's kind of everyone else's fault.
Yeah, I remember the were you at the server second emp kill on Cello?
No, I don't believe so.
Gotcha.
I was there for their first attempt on Cello and Imp, and that was when like up until that point Grisvox was fine with me streaming it, and then like when we wiped to Imp in a really dumb, pathetic way, he was like, I can't believe he's fucking streaming this. Tell him to turn it off or get out of the guilds, something like that. And that's when
Oh, I remember that, dude. You guys wiped 2 XTC, like he just ramped through your whole raid.
yeah. Yeah, and that was when I did leave Amtrak, and I think I joined Ivis or something for like 2 weeks or whatever. But I didn't actually raid with him. I just joined the guild as like a way to say fuck you to Grizz.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember yeah, it's just and a little anecdote about Griswold was like he rage quit when Faceless got the server first emp kill. He just logged off. And as a result, he didn't have a crystal or whatever, a rift to enter VT for the server first VT clear.
Yeah, I do remember hearing about that after the fact, like people pointing it out. And I think Mabu did something similar. Like maybe he logged off in the middle of Vexthal because he got pissed off, thinking that they wouldn't finish it without him or something.
So, um, while Mabu was leading that server first VT attempt, Grisvok came in and started arguing with Mabu, and then kicked Mabu out of the guild mid raid. And Mabu stayed in there and finished the raid, but the DZ timer, it took him over 6 hours, and they still hadn't gotten to Ot 10, so the zone just closed. And then that's when Mabu hit us up, and we talked about like them coming over to us, but they wanted to finish the Luckland race before they came over. They basically wanted to finish what they started.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Sorry, I got us off track on Cello somehow.
Oh, it was my fault. But anyway, I'm interested to hear what you think of Griswold at this point.
Um, in Velious and before that, I didn't really have any bad opinions about Grisvok. He was just kind of the guy that led the guild. I knew he would train people, and at that point, I'd leveled to 50 with him. I considered him not. I wouldn't call him a friend at that point, but like someone that I didn't mind playing with because he's pretty good at his class, took care of things. But it wasn't. It would be like towards the end of Pop where my opinion of Grisvok would start going down just because of the way he would start leading the guild in a direction that I thought was more serving him than the guild itself.
When did you first start seeing the like the racism, the hard end words and stuff from Griswold? Was that always there, or was that just like a cello thing?
I didn't see that on Phinigel really. If he was talking like that, it wasn't where I would see it. It might, be in private conversations and stuff like that.
But you did eventually see the screenshots from Cello, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I saw the cello drama, which is, unfortunate, but I know there's a lot of people that have those kind of opinions, and especially in EverQuest.
Yeah, that's a lot of boomers hanging around.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is about EverQuest and old racist people, but it seems to attract them.
Have you guilded with him since Cello launch?
I don't believe so.
Yeah,
I I got someone told me that he was like in our guild and Greed is good, but playing under like but like hiding who he was for a while. I don't know if that was true or if that was just someone looking for the boogeyman, basically.
I don't believe it. I don't think a guy like him could hide. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think so either. Because when Milan snuck back into our guild on Phinigel, I sniffed him out like near instantly. And
Right.
Milan is a lot less overt than Griswold is.
This is a good segue to talk about Milan, because he was at this time in Velious in Luckland. He was in your guild, right? AOS.
Yeah, Milan joined us, I believe, in Velious as a bard, and like things were fine with him for a while. He was a little more vocal than most of the other bards about like, feeling like he wasn't being treated right or not getting as much as he wanted. But other than that, he was just kind of a whiny player. I think he may have been upset that he didn't get a Mask of Tinkering, or maybe upset that he had to pay as much as he did. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it would be Planes of Power that he just started like being a general asshole and a real pain in the ass, mostly for me, because that was when I started raid leading, and he would just like send me weird racist tells now and then, and just like, like fuck off, Bobby, stuff like that. Just dumb things that made me think like, why am I inviting this guy to my raids?
Right.
And I don't
Was
remember
he the guy who had a
exactly.
meltdown over the overhaste earring too?
Yeah, that I
Yeah.
think that was the final straw that like made me kick him out of the guild, because he sent me just like a tirade of tells one day. It was like a 5 a.m. Plane of Earth raid, and he's just like bitching at me and tells, and it's like, all right, dude, enough is enough. And I just kicked him out of the guild. And then he goes and cries to all the other officers, and nobody wants to re-invite him back. And I think that was the only person I ever kicked out of AOS, because I don't think I was technically supposed to kick anyone out
Right.
as just like a raid leader. But at that point, everyone was so tired of Milan that it was like, all right, whatever, that's cool.
They were probably like happy that you pulled the trigger and it wasn't them.
Yeah, right.
Now, then he would go on and like he was the guy who would also come and try to like post like Game of Thrones spoilers and stuff randomly. Just like he would do anything to try to make people upset.
Oh yeah, he would send me tells about like he would try to spoil movies for me. He would try to spoil Game of Thrones. He would just like send me tells about how he hopes my dogs die or whatever. It just like out of nowhere, these could be days like separated out. It could be months. And it was like it's like this guy just won't quit. And I guess I must have really pissed him off when I kicked him out of the guild because it went on for probably like a year or two after that.
Now, it's funny this ties us together a little bit because he joined us on Agnar. We didn't know who he was, but he joined us as Dabber, a guy named Dabber. And even if we knew who he was, like without knowing the full story of things, we would have taken him because like the number of people who came into our guild who like had bad blood with AOS or TL was like infinite, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't stop us. We always wanted to give people like a clean shot at things. But yeah, so he joined our guild totally incognito, didn't talk about that stuff. And we were really big on trying to complete content as fast as we possibly could, not just like server first. And he would take that information and he would go onto FOH and the EQ forums and he would DM AOS leadership and talk a ton of shit as a faceless member.
Yeah.
And it created this bad blood between the two guilds that we actually, on my side, we didn't know it was bubbling up, and until Corrupt started talking about it kind of on FOH, and we're like, where's this coming from? You know what I mean? But apparently that whole time Dabber was talking a ton of shit. And we eventually kicked him because he would get in arguments with people all the time. And we're just like, okay, it's just an idiot fighting with people. But he eventually got in an argument with someone and he used the N-word. He called him the N-word. And we're like, okay, well, that's a kick. And that was our whole history with the guy.
Yeah, I've always tried to view new servers as kind of like a clean slate for everyone because, at this point, I've played with almost everyone, I think, at least all the like major players in all the different guilds. So, like, if I was still holding on to bad blood from Phinigel, I probably couldn't join any guilds at this point. There's
Yeah.
only, I think, 4 people that I just will not group/guild or play with at this point, and luckily most of those people I don't think play in the same circles as me.
Yeah. Now I also have, I think, 4 people. Who are your 4 people?
So it's Mabu, Milan, Bumumgar. I'm trying to think of who the last one is. I was just thinking it and like going over it in my head. Crims.
Really? You don't like Crims?
I didn't have any problem with Crims until he accused me of like being part of the plat dupers on Mischief and basically decided to start changing the rules just for me for his guild. And it was like, okay, dude, we've been cool up until now, but if you're gonna just accuse me of these things and tell me, just get out or deal with it, then I'm just not gonna want to play with you again.
That's crazy because Crim knew who the Plat Duper was on Mischief. You know what I mean? It's crazy that he would accuse you.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I got most of my plat from Rich Girl, who was always more than happy to convert her plat into chrono, and or his whatever. And then I would just take that plat to the raids and buy items, and then take them to common lands.
Do you know who the Plat Duper was?
I know who one of them was. I don't know. I know there were multiple people involved, but I know who one of them was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even think I could say their. I don't think I could say the names of the people. I'm not at that place in in my life where I could like name those people. But there was 3 people that I'm aware of who were part of like a cartel of sorts, and it was all of them. And I know one of them was in Treasure. I guess it was still Faceless X and Virtue at the time, and they found out it was him, and they said he couldn't bid in Plat anymore. He could only bid in Chrono or something. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
And the other two
remember that.
people, I probably just can't name at all right now.
Yeah, Toxin keyed me into at least one of them, other than the guy that got banned from bidding plat and guild.
Yeah,
But I'm sworn to secrecy in that at least.
good. Yeah, good. But yeah, so that was surprising. But I guess if Krim just accuses you of something, I could see it. I think my people who I wouldn't play with, Probably Grisvok. Just, I don't want to associate with the kind of behavior he has.
Yeah.
Um,
Honestly, I
probably,
shouldn't either. He just hasn't done anything bad enough specifically to me that I guess that's why I don't really care if he's in my guild.
yeah. Yeah, I almost don't like want to name the people I wouldn't play with because I think it like gives them like a little boost. You know what I mean? They'll feel happy about it. But
You have to. It's
probably,
DramaQuest.
probably Grisvok, probably Discord. And those two I think are pretty much the same reason. Like if people are just and Dabber for that reason, Milan. Like if people are saying the N word and all that stuff, I don't want to really hang around it. And who would be my fourth person? Probably Bishi.
Yeah, that's a good one. I kind of forgot about Adabishi and Hicks. I don't really know so much if I dislike Hicks to that point, but he just kind of felt like a flunky.
Oh yeah, 100%. Now Hicks is just like a guy who trolls because he's bored. I think you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
which is okay. Like if you want to make an ass out of yourself or be an idiot on the forums, I don't really mind that. But yeah, I mean, I'll save any talk about the other characters for Airdoon server. But yeah, I mean, personally, I don't mind Mabu that much. We've gotten along a lot in the past, but it's talking to the guy and hanging out with the guy is kind of like it's like holding a bomb in your hands, right? Like eventually it's going to detonate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I talked to Mabu one night in TeamSpeak. Like someone arranged it where like I don't know how it came about, but Mabu just wanted to talk to me and try to clear the air, and things were civil between us, but I didn't really leave it feeling like I wanted to associate with him any more than when I started.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, we talked a lot when he was on Thornblade and I was on Mischief, and we got along pretty good. And then I absorbed his guild and took over a few of his officers as my officers, and then I demoted one of his officers, and it created like some enmity between us. But I would say it's like mostly one sided if it exists at all.
Mm,
It might just be like current competition necessitates some QQ. You know what I mean?
yeah, I would say the disdain between Mabu and myself is probably all just my sided. I don't know that I've ever done anything specifically to Mabu to where he wouldn't like me, other than maybe calling him a piece of shit on the forums and Discord and Reddit and stuff like that,
And this
and my
podcast.
stream
Yeah.
and this podcast. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I guess there's a few things maybe.
All right. So you guys are going into Luckland now, right? Luckland launch. You're probably expecting to win.
Yeah, so Luckland launches goes. So Luckland was delayed on Phinigel for I don't remember if it was a month, 2 months, or 3 months, but whatever it was, it felt like forever because we still had to keep killing dragons for that much longer, and that was because they just weren't ready with Mitigation of the Mighty. Like Prathen or whoever was in charge of it just didn't have it done. The AOCs weren't done, and so we had to sit and wait. And then it finally came out. It's go time. We're flying around Luckland. There were like pre-made groups set up specifically to like go farm shards in specific areas. Like one group goes to Mariseru, or not Mariseru. Mariseru doesn't have any shards. Like Dawn Shroud. One group goes to the Gray. One group goes to Shra. Well, multiple groups go to Shra because I think we went and killed Cursed first, and like cleared out the taskmasters to get pouches, that sort of deal, and then we split up into those groups. That all went fine. And then OGC ends up winning the expansion because up until that point, like we had said, they weren't really a threat as far as server first were concerned. They were a threat at like sniping a raid boss at 7 o'clock in the morning because we weren't paying attention.
Right. Now, there a big issue with Emp Straw and the DZ? Like Pratt and Kim has shut down the DZs and stuff because you found out that OGC was bypassing the key requirement for Emp in the DZ.
I think that was actually us. We went into the DZ was our initial plan because we were going to kill Cursed and kill all the other orb droppers and like hope that we would get some more commanders or whatever in the process. And for whatever reason, we went up to the click up room to Emperor to kill like advisor and whatever. And someone in the guild just clicked the teleporter and was like, "I'm up in Emp's room." And the officers are like, "No, you're not. We're not keyed yet." And they're like, "Yeah, I am. I'm staring at Blood of Shra." And, sure enough, we click up and we're just in the room because they forgot to put the key requirement in the AOC. And
That's
so we
crazy.
kill.
Like, it's crazy,
Yeah.
but also kind of predictable, right?
Yeah, 100% predictable. It's just the exact sort of thing that they would miss because it's an easy thing to forget, is making sure that the teleporters have their flag requirements set correctly. We're just in the corner there in Blood's room, staring him down, kind of thinking about what we want to do here. And Prathen shows up as a little halfling right in front of us because I guess he was either keeping an eye on things or someone keyed him off about what was happening. I know there were a few people, not going to name names, that would occasionally rat us out to the GMs because they were in the CRC program and, would
First,
it would occasionally help us, but most of the time it would hurt us. And in this case, Pratham was like, "I don't think you guys are supposed to be up here yet. You should probably leave this area." And so there was kind of just this little pause where I think Grisvok and the other officers were considering, like, well, what if we don't leave? What's going to happen then? And I don't think we directly asked Pratham that, but I think we all knew what was probably going to happen. So we ended up leaving the AOC and going and farming the keys. And so we didn't get our free super early emp and skip half the keying process. And back then, or at least through all of Phinigel, we never pulled Emperor out of his room. We didn't, like, if that was possible on Phinigel and other guilds were doing it, we weren't doing it and we weren't smart enough to do it.
I was
We
gonna
went up.
ask. I was gonna ask if you knew. It was definitely possible because I did it on test in like 2012 on accident, and then somebody hit me up with details on how to do it very consistently, and that's why we started doing it for Agnar.
Yeah, no, on Finny, we went up to his room every single time. We cleared all the way through the locked doors and had people go around and into the corner and every single kill. And we killed a lot of Emperors over the course of that expansion on that server. Never pulled, what's his name? Lord Seru out of his tower, although that one's not as useful.
I
We
didn't I
did.
didn't know that that was possible. Like you pull them out of the arcs entirely.
Yeah, if you aggro Seru and like go out through the teleporter, sometimes he'll like warp down, or he'll warp like all the way over to the Dawn Shroud Peak zone line, and you can just engage him right there and skip having to clear through the temple. But
Gotcha. But of course, like if you have one key, you have all the keys you need for Seru. So
yeah,
why?
yeah, it's not as big of a saving grace. It just kind of speeds things. It's more useful if you're small manning him and you don't want to have to like box all your characters through the maze and stuff like that.
Yeah. Or if you've got one unscrupulous player who's willing to warp into Seru to do it.
Yep, that is true. It would also work.
All right. So was there a big drama bomb when Dima got that when you saw that first Otten yellow text roll through?
Yeah, because I think we actually zoned into Vexthal to like contest them for AHR, and we tried, exploiting the geometry to run up the side of the wall to just drop down into AHR's room and skip the rest of the zone. Because back then the warders weren't working, so
Yep.
you didn't actually have to clear the whole zone. Dima, for whatever reason, decided to clear the whole zone. I'm not really sure what his plan was there, why he did it that way. It might have been to wait for a few more keys in the process. Don't know,
Maybe
but
he didn't know. I don't know. It
maybe.
seems unlikely that he wouldn't know.
It does seem unlikely because Grisvog definitely knew, and a few of our other officers knew. So I'm guessing it was an old thing from back on Fippy. But yeah, I don't remember exactly how we still lost after trying to exploit into the room, but they still ended up getting the AHR kill. And then we would go on to get like every other AHR for the rest of the expansion, but we still lost Luckland because of that.
Right. Yeah. Like the server first loss is a loss is a loss.
Yep. Doesn't matter how many you get after that. Your second place, you're always going to be second place.
Right. Now, I was surprised, because like the guild had a little bit of a reputation at that point of being like, oh, they lose an expansion and they fold.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys kept it going though, and I think you guys blitzed pop like ultra fast, right?
Yeah, Pop was a pretty fast expansion. I did the other thing again where I slept through part of it. I don't know that I've ever done Plane of Air on a TLP launch. I always seem to end up sleeping through that one. And, I'm not complaining. I think it's probably the worst zone of the whole expansion.
It's
Yep.
miserable.
Yeah, Pop went quick. And
Did you guys have
then
corpse banking, or was that nerfed right before?
we did have corpse banking. And that was what allowed us to kind of sweep through Pop, partially because we were stronger in the Plane of Storms races as a result of it. We
Now I
had
remember all
more
that drama
65s.
in the days leading up to pop, where people were posting screenshots like, "Oh, here's 500 Satoshi corpses hiding in this zone." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean that was something the officers approached players about, and the warriors specifically and clerics and enchanters were pretty much instructed to go to zones like Shadowhaven or Grob or Hallis and just bind there and create 200, 300 corpses and then log out for a couple of days to expedient them back on launch, and it worked. We had enchanters ready to mez targets for things like Wrath Council. We had warriors that were 65 and could just tank the bosses better. I want to say there was one other class we had bank. It might have been Bling or another Bard, so that they would have access to Fade to make Wrath Council a little bit easier, or just general rating easier for us.
yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, that definitely did help us significantly in the Storms medallion races because we just had more 65s.
Now, during that pop race, this wasn't the one where OGC got suspended, or was it?
Mm, suspended for what, if
I
you
think
can
it was
remember?
Fippy where they got suspended for exploiting the door and playing innovation and getting Xanamek
I
before.
don't recall that happening on Finny. I want to say it was just a clean race on Finny.
Okay, you know
Oh, well,
what?
clean. I'll go ahead and say it clean, quote unquote, because we exploited the door in Plane of Torment.
Yeah, I
But
mean, honestly, who cares, right? Right?
yeah, I mean, it saved us a lot of time. I've farmed those orb droppers for that key before, and it could take days.
So when you exploited the door, did you do the file trick or the summon through the door trick?
We did the summon through the door trick with, I believe, one of our necromancers got summoned through the door, and then res clerics through the door, and then we just res the whole guild through the door.
That's crazy. Um, Now you're back then. Expansion launches were like a nightmare of lag, right? Still,
Yeah, Plane of Tranquility was near unusable for hours and hours after the server launched. There were like 400 players in it, more and more entering, tons of people just hitting zone lines throughout all of Pop, and I think it was just bringing the whole server to a crawl.
yeah. And Tranquility, even on Mischief launch, all these years later, still didn't have a pick zone.
It's kind of crazy because we have
Yeah,
pick zones of like everything else that matters, but I guess it is something that only really comes into play for the first day of a TLP, so they're not interested in fixing that. I'm
yeah,
glad they finally fixed MPG at least.
yeah. But didn't OGC? They had some kind of big mishap, like their Planet Disease.
Oh
The server
yeah,
crashed while they were in Planet Disease, and the lockout hit them, but they didn't get to finish.
it was actually Crypt of Decay, and I remember now they went and did their instance of Crypt of Decay to get their Burtox kill while we did open world, and yeah, their AOC dropped, or the server crashed because launch night craziness. This is why we didn't do AOCs the first night. And so they just didn't have a way to kill Burtox until his first respawn cycle. And when Burtox's first open world respawn cycle happened, like 2 or 3 days later, we got that one as well. And yeah, for whatever reason, they just didn't contest it. I don't know if they weren't tracking it or if there just weren't people around, but it basically set them back, 2 full Burtox cycles worth of kills, which pretty much meant they had no chance of beating us in the expansion.
Right. It's basically like you wait a week for the AOC at that point.
Yeah, they would try to like contest us for one Ralozek warlord kill and tactics after that, because I think they were just trying to get back at us for losing Burtox, but that was just farming for gear at that point.
Yeah, no, that really sucks because I'm sure they were gunning for a good race after having won Luckland. They were probably ready, and then through nobody's fault, just a loss delivered to them.
Yeah, I'd be super pissed if I were them. I'm sure Demo is super pissed, and it wouldn't be the first time, or it wouldn't be the last time that he would go on to lose an expansion because of like game related problems.
Yeah. Now you guys, proceed to just do the normal crush pop content. How much attrition did you experience here? This is usually like one of the few big watershed moments for killing guilds and stuff.
Well, that was why I had to start being an officer, partially because we were just losing like raid leaders. Grisvot kind of stopped logging in a couple weeks into pop because at that point we'd kind of won in a lot of people's eyes. I don't think he was interested in Lost Dungeons of Norath racing. He would come back for the Gates of Discord launch, but yeah, and then we just would occasionally bleed off players. People would disappear. They'd sell their characters. The usual TLP woes.
Yeah.
And we didn't
By
have we didn't have a lot very good recruiting at that point either, because by now we'd had what 4 expansions worth of time where we had just kind of been assholes to the whole server.
Mhm.
We're the guild that woke up the sleeper and stopped them from being able to experience that content. So when people were looking for a new guild to join, if they were unhappy with theirs, they weren't looking at us. They were looking at like OGC or MIM or something a little bit below us that was still clearing all the content but didn't have all the negative connotations involved.
Especially when you got OGC, who's still a day one guild. I think that's the thing that matters to players. Like, you got a few players who really care about being literally first, but there's a lot of players who are happy with a day one guild.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those. Wild Treasures to me still felt like a day one guild because it was still all the same people, but didn't last,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Now, do you think was that issue that was kind of starting to rear its head where people were not going to join you because of the reputation? Was that something the leadership was cognizant of? Was it something they cared about? You know what I mean?
I think it was because that was partially why Carrillo wanted to start Wild Treasures. It was, he didn't, or not Wild Treasures. He just wanted a new guild separate from Grisvok because of the drama that started in God and him wanting to just kind of have a fresh start with a new name and kind of put ourselves out there as like a guild that isn't super extreme. We're gonna raid, we're gonna do good things, and we're not the bad guys that you're used to.
Right. Yeah. Just kind of give yourselves a clean slate. Now, I heard Grisvok for a while, maybe since like Luckland, had been kind of half-assing it. Like he'd show up to a raid, put someone on follow, and then be basically AFK, or he'd give himself DKP credit for raids he wasn't attending. Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, that's definitely something that happened. There was big drama between Toxin and Skycam, and it was over Scepter of Destruction back in Velious because Skycam was given what was called tracking DKP after the fact.
Lol.
So, oh, actually, I don't think it was Toxin. Maybe it
No,
was.
it was the streamer. It was the
Maybe
what's his name?
Sagnan? Setsa.
Cap
Setsa.
Drew.
Oh no, Cabdrew. Yeah, you're right. I'm like completely spacing. Yes, Cabdrew and Skycam. And Cabdrew at the time had more DKP than Skycam, like as the mob is dying. And so he's like, okay, sweet, I'm gonna get a Scepter of Destruction or whatever it is. And everyone wanted something out of the Sleeper's Tomb. But somehow Skycam got like 30 more DKP out of nowhere, and ended up winning it. And it was called like tracking DKP because he tracked Plane of Growth a few days back or whatever that was given to him by Grisvok in the moment.
It's got to be real shitty because everybody knows what Skycam is going to do with that SOD. Like he has a reputation, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, Cavdrew probably would have done the same, but at least he would have earned it legitimately.
Yeah, I mean, he would have sold it maybe like a couple months later at least. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and then
yeah,
Skycam proceeds to sell it and tell us that he had to sell it to buy a water heater or whatever his dumb excuse was.
right.
Yeah, but no, the Grisvok thing was definitely there in Velious. It might have been there in Kunark, and I just wasn't paying attention. But yeah, there were a number of plane of growth clears where we'd be on the east side of the river, like getting ready to engage Tunair, and Grisvok's necromancer is just on the west wall, feign death, and he's going to get full credit for the raid.
Yeah,
And the reasoning back then and the reasoning going after that was that Grisvok was running all of the laptops with Show EQ running that were set up to like send text messages to the officers. Like as soon as something spawned, it would send an SMS message to all the officers who would then like go manually confirm it by either, going and looking themselves or VMing into his laptops. Um, yeah. And so he just justified giving himself DKP by saying, well, I'm running 7 laptops to track all the targets. I get all the DKP. I don't have to show up for the raids. That's my contribution.
yeah,
I can kind of accept that, but at the same time, it's still kind of shitty when, especially when like he wins an item over another player when he's like barely contributing the rest of the time.
right. Yeah, no, like you could see the argument, but I mean, you also just know it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I remember that was a big deal at first when somebody outed your tracking system, you know what I mean, for being fully automated. You know what I mean? It would automatically bat phone all the officers, and then it's just like you needed one officer to check, and that was it. And someone posted all the screenshots. And I remember specifically like your Twitter screenshot coming up and all that.
Yeah. I kind of forgot about the old Twitter. That was how the system worked, is like sending messages across it. And yeah, I was part of that group. Like my job was to be in that Twitter, and when something would be pinged, like in Shra or whatever, then I'd run down there on my rogue and confirm that it is in fact up, and it's not just like a fake NPC or someone with a name that's the mob popping in to troll us.
Right. Now, so you are I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but like you're a person who's used Show EQ, right? Like it popped up on a stream one time. We talked about just this bat phone thing, but you have never used MQ, right?
That is correct. I have used Show EQ extensively in the past. I think it is a invaluable tool, especially when raid leading or being an officer in any sort of guild that's doing open world content. But I have never used MacroQuest, not because like I have anything particularly against it. I just haven't ever felt the need to use it. Like if I thought that I could get it set up and it would make my life significantly easier to box on like a live server, I would probably do it.
Hmm.
But the things that I do on TLP, I don't think I need it.
Do you think one is worse than the other, or do you think it's all kind of the same?
I think there's degrees. Yeah. I would say Show EQ, depending on how you use it, can be fairly innocuous. Like if I'm playing a cleric and I'm using Show EQ to keep myself entertained because I can watch what the puller is doing while sitting in camp, that's a far cry from someone using MacroQuest to warp 12 characters around South Karana to kill brother Zephyl over and over and over.
Right. I mean, and yeah, like even the degree of what people do with MacroQuest is pretty crazy, right? There's people who I think just use it to box more or less, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like
Broadcasting
if
keys.
someone wants to use MacroQuest so that they have a better slash follow ability, more power to them. EverQuest's follow is dog shit, and they should have fixed it years ago.
Yeah. I mean, but now you have people who do like what we would call active hacks, like the far taunting, warping.
Yeah,
I think those are the only active hacks I really know of.
yeah, that's definitely getting into the. I would consider it more cheating than kind of I wouldn't say Show EQ is quality of life. It's definitely still cheating, but it is not hurting anyone as long as you're not using it to, like race someone to a mob.
Yeah. Now, have you seen like there's like a BIS EQ or whatever? I don't even think it's called that anymore, but like that weird program where supposedly like you can make your character never get feared or rooted or stunned.
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's like there was some drama with that. It was used It was used around Cello timeline. It was first coming out around Cello launch, and I want to say like in the middle of Airdune's launch, someone like hacked their database and just spilled all the usernames and passwords and emails and sent it all to Daybreak, and Daybreak was like, "We don't care."
Nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
sounds about par for Daybreak.
yeah. But anyway, so moving on with that, you guys go into God launch. Are you expecting it to be a race?
No, we weren't really. Well, no, that's not true. We were expecting it to be a race. We were not expecting it to be as close as it was, given how badly OGC did in pop.
Mm,
And but yeah, that was probably the best race of all the servers because I don't know what the final time was. Different was it was like less than 5 minutes or whatever.
yeah.
Oh,
So
you know
what?
what? Sorry, I want to go back to Luckland. I do remember what happened with AHR. So OGC was doing it, I want to say in their instance and not open world, and so
That's what I remember.
we
Yeah.
went to open world to kill AHR, and but they were like already getting ready to pull it, so we're rushing to get up there. We pull AHR, and we just killed it too slow. Like
Yeah.
they beat us by a few minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah. That's pretty much what I remember too.
Yeah. I only remember that because of how the GOD race went, because it was very similar where it was just down to the wire. You know, both guilds are rushing through TAC V, going as fast as they possibly can, taking the short route through the south. And then, it just comes down to engaging and killing him faster. And I don't know what the final time was, but I want to say they killed it like less than a minute after us.
It was close because I remember I watched your God full clear like probably like 10 times because I'm retarded.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember seeing their yellow text while you guys were still doing 2net loot on your video.
Yeah, it was way closer than we thought, and we were surprised that theirs was so soon after ours. And two gods like OGC and AOS, which would then be Wild Treasures, actually had like three separate really close races. We had Luckland, God, and the Buried
DON.
Sea. Don, was Don
DON,
close?
you guys were like less than 5 seconds apart. It was insane.
Okay, then there were four. That is crazy how many there were. Given like some of those expansions were days long. Some were only a few hours, but
Right.
still to come down to minutes is pretty impressive.
Yeah, DON was like less than a server tick. It's insane. There's a video, I'll have to send it to you after this, from one of the OGC guys. Like they're in their raid, Vishimtar is at 0% health. They're cheering, and then before he becomes a corpse, the AOS yellow text rolls by, and everyone starts like losing their shit.
Yeah, I mean those races are what makes the game fun. Really, that's kind of why I stopped playing on Phinigel after Wild Treasures folded. Is I knew there weren't going to be any more races after that.
Yeah. Now, I'm really interested in your God launch, though. You guys were really, really, really fast. Did you do a lot of testing?
We did. We had everyone go through at least one tipped trial. I think we had them do two just to make sure, like, and they had to clear it in under, I don't know, 20 minutes or something. It was almost like homework we assigned everyone. Then we went through all of Ukwa and all the raids, really. And part of my assignment was to, like, make sure that we're doing all the tasks and the quest in the fastest way we can, which is why we figured out that you could talk to the dwarf in Code Taz and skip Summoner's Ring, or not Summoner. What is it? The graveyard area in the north, and like
Yep,
picking up
yep.
all the items. If you say the right phrase to him, you can skip a bunch of quests. If you say the wrong phrase, then you're like locked into doing the quest because of the dumb way the hidden flags worked, and that saved us probably like 3-4 hours at least. And then a lot of it was just good execution by people that were ready to get out of Pop and Eldon. And
So I
also,
remember,
once
I
we knew OGC were close to us, it started going really fast. And there was some drama with Zun Miram because I want to say, like we did the High Priest event in Sevu to get the key to Zun Miram's room, but OGC bypassed the door somehow.
oh,
So
super easy to bypass the door.
yeah, So like there was that. It was like, okay, well they're gonna get an asterisk if they beat us because they didn't have a key, ignoring playing a tournament and all that
Right,
because
right,
there was no
right.
proof.
Rules for thee, but not for me.
Exactly. Yeah, and that definitely caught them back up a lot of times, skipping that whole high priest
God,
and
it saves an hour,
master
man.
of
It's
champion
huge.
event. Yeah.
Yeah. So I watched your God launch videos prepping for ours. Like up to pop, obviously Faceless won Classic and Kunark. Then we split, and it became Gig versus Faceless, and Gig won Velious and Luckland and Pop. And I wanted to race again for God. We finally got the guild really underneath us where we wanted. And I watched your God video, and I would take timestamps for every raid that you did, like how long it took you to finish each segment. And on test, I was like, we need to beat this time. And I think I made the guild do 5 tipped runs with the goal of being 13 minutes or less on tipped.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was probably one of my favorite expansions. Here are the times that I had for us to beat. Ukwa had to be sub 33, Ikens 1 sub 15, 2 sub 20, 3 sub 30, 4 sub 25, Ink 2 to sub 30, and then TAC V want from zone in to Tunat sub 34 minutes. And we ended up beating Tunat before midnight, so it was like it worked pretty much.
Yeah. GOD is a fun expansion because you could knock it all out real quick and just be done with it. I like
Yeah,
those expansions that are like a day long. I don't really like the multi-day expansions anymore.
they're rough. They're real rough. I mean, now that you have a family and everything, it's just like it's very hard.
Yeah, I don't really know when, if ever, I'm going to be able to raid regularly in any video game again, which, no, it's okay. My son's pretty all right.
Yeah. So you won that God. Now Omens comes out at this point, like after God and Luckland. You guys are expecting like a big race, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
You know,
Dima fumbles the ball here.
yeah. So it went as most Omens races go. Both guilds are competing for Signet mobs. They didn't drop 6 at the time yet, or 3, whatever it is now. So both guilds are kind of competing in RSS for the last few signets that we needed. And then both guilds kind of go into the MPG raid trials relatively the same time, I want to say. But Dima messed up because back then you had to like
Click the
zone
zone
out of,
out.
yeah, you had to zone out of the last trial to finish your flag, or you have to like zone out and click back in order for the flag to finalize. And because he dropped the expedition at the end of their last raid, none of their characters could get flagged until those lockouts ended, which I think
5
was
days
like,
later.
yeah, 5 days. There's no getting around it. There's no open world mob you can kill. You just have to wait for the instance. And so once that had happened, we kind of just decided, okay, we don't need to rush anymore. We're going to go farm some ancient runes to make sure we have charms for OMM. And that all got done. And that's all she wrote.
I
I
cannot imagine how that must have felt for Dima the moment you realized that you just blew it, you know?
Yeah, and there's nothing you can do. Like I think he probably petitioned it, and they're like, "Yeah, sorry, we can't fix the flags for 72 people or whatever it was."
Right. And by then it's like 9 p.m. So when you petition, they're not going to respond until the next day too.
Yeah, I even kind of like was lazy for that launch once they lost, and I think it was Grizzlock said we were going to go to RCOD and kill those dumb raids to get ancient runes or 70 runes, whatever, to get the charm spells. I actually logged out and went to sleep for like 3 hours and came back for just the start of Anguish.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys rush King and Queen open world since there was no AOC for them?
No, I don't think we did King and Queen.
Ah, interesting.
Uh, I don't remember. I think we may have killed them once in open world on the entirety of Finny, but I don't remember doing those fights more than maybe once or twice.
How crazy is it that like 8 years after they added AOCs, we still do not have an AOC for Riftseeker Sanctum?
It's certainly odd, but you know, I understand why they don't want to do it because it's a lot of work creating those AOCs, and it's a non-progression target. They seem more gung ho about creating AOCs back in the early eras, and then after maybe like Luckland, they were like, okay, we have to keep doing this because we said we were going to do it, but we're not going to do it forever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they must be busy. I know it's a small team now, but it just is crazy because like one of the most liked posts ever on the forums is like, "Please add these by Hampshire." So
Yeah, it took them a while to add AOCs for. I can't remember what it was. I want to say it was some zone in POR that
Theater
needed
of
it.
Blood.
Yeah, yeah, because it was just open world, and so that wasn't really so much of a hiccup for us because we had the Porthio kill, but it did make getting flags a little slower than it could have been if we had been able to split raid AOCs.
Yeah, definitely getting those inspirations and stuff. Now, this is about the time where you guys changed from Asylum of Shadow to Wild Treasures, and you dropped Grisvok finally, right?
Yeah, so Grisvok had been not even raid logging in GOD, kind of just occasionally showing up. And there was one particular incident where he logged in for attack V clear and he said, okay, we're going to do two raids. And whichever raid clears TAC V first is going to get DKP and the other one isn't. Or they're going to get double DKP and the other raid's going to get 0. And as you can expect, that didn't go over well with the majority of the guild because, whichever raid lost pretty much just felt like their whole night was wasted and they were stuck in the bad raid. Why weren't the good DPS in that raid? Because of course Grisvok's raid won. He stacked the raid in his favor.
Mhm.
And at that point, like Carrillo and a few other officers started getting together to figure out, like, okay, well, Grisvok's never going to leave. We just need to make a new guild.
Yeah. Anytime you have like a guild leader who's like becoming absent but still comes in and makes like random heavy-handed decisions, it starts bubbling up.
Yeah, I think he was bored of the game at that point because, like, the race was over and he was just finding a way to entertain himself.
Yeah. So it was before or just during Omens when the coup finally took place.
Um, I think it was actually during Omens that all that went down. We were still like going back and farming TACV, and
Uh
I think Grisok was there for like the first clears of Anguish, so it would have had to have been after that.
yeah.
But yeah, it started with Carrillo being the guild leader, and he was supposed to like run everything, but then he kind of immediately dropped the ball and just passed it on to Astral and Kellen and a couple others. And they did a pretty good job with it because like depths went fine, POR went fine, TSS went as fine as it could, considering that like Telgrith wasn't spawning.
Yeah.
My girl brought me a drink. She could see that my lips were just a desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, Griswold was obviously a little peeved when we split off and uh, kind of did what he could. But once we were separated from him, it was definitely for the better, and everyone involved. It was Anna that was Bumumgar's wife,
Mm, okay.
AUENA.
Was uh was Grisvok the one who like threatened legal action about using a guild name or the website or something? Do you remember that?
If he did, I don't remember that.
That
It
might have been
sounds like
Thraka.
something he might have done,
Oh, I guess yeah. Given yeah.
given his profession. I
Well.
guess that's minor
Yeah.
doxing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was either him or Thraka with TL. One of those two. When the guild changeover happened, there was like some cease and desist discussion.
Yeah, we completely forgot was Claimgate.
Oh
That
yeah,
was
talk about
Phinigel.
Claimgate. That was Lachlan.
Yeah, so that'll be a quick one. So in Lucklin, we figured out that you could claim any item in your claim window by just, shifting around where the refresh landed, and then like whatever was highlighted was what you could claim. And we figured that out at something like 3 a.m. I'm sure someone told Toxin and Toxin told me, and that's how it all started. And I think I sent out like a soft bat phone to the whole guild being like, hey, you guys can claim anything you want if you want to log in. And
Ooh,
then, yeah,
you guys can get banned if you want to log in.
yeah, basically. So yeah, we had a lot of people claiming items. Everyone was excited to claim Defiant Armor and hope to get the pants or the arms and get Cleave or Ferocity 1. Like, 3 expansions early, but ultimately
Still
those
big.
stats don't really do that much.
Yeah.
But, at that point, Daybreak wasn't, or Sony, whatever they were called at the time, weren't really known for banning people. Like, we had watched Grisvok train people, call them the N word in OOC, and nothing was ever done. Like, you would eat a 1 week suspension. So to
Right.
us, like that was the biggest punishment that could be doled out was a week suspension. Is it worth potentially getting all these cool out of era items for a 1 week suspension? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you're like, it's already
Unfortunately,
the end of Luckland. Who cares?
yeah, yeah, like okay, whatever. I don't have to clear AHR for a week. Sounds like a vacation to me. And then they started doling out punishments, and they ranged from taking the items away and a slap on the wrist, couple weeks suspension, all the way up to just permanently banning you and every account associated with your email.
It
Because
was
that's
based
what
on the
happened to
number of
me.
times you exploited it, right?
Yeah, it was all based on quantity. Didn't matter what you claimed, it was just a quantity thing. So, like, I had claimed like a total of 133 items, and like 100 of them were just the same verdant hedgerow lion from House of Thule because I had to keep claiming it to refresh my list to just change where the items would appear.
Hmm.
And yeah, so that's why I ended up getting banned and lost both my original accounts. One was like a recruit a friend account, the other one was the recruiter, had all my fanfare SOE live stuff on it. Mask of Tinkering, couple hundred chrono, no big deal. It was definitely worth it for a couple pieces of Defiant armor.
Now they still to this day won't unban that, right?
That's correct. For like 4 years afterwards, I would petition every year on like the anniversary of my banning, which was like December 20th or something, and they would always give me the same canned response of like, this account is permanently banned and will not be unbanned. The end. Closed.
Should ask Niente to help you out, man.
At this point, I feel like it just has to stay banned for the story.
Yeah, that's true. I feel it reminds me of Frank. Like I have tried to get Frank's Discord account unbanned from the official Discord so he could come make fun of people like 10 different times every time they get a new CM, and they always say
Mm-hmm.
no.
Yeah, he's on the no fly list forever. It's like a
Yeah.
picture of Frank and it says, "Don't take checks from this man."
Right. Now, were you there for Dragons of Norath launch?
Yeah, I was there for all the launches.
Okay.
DON doesn't really stand out to me other than being fast and over
Yeah, it's like a
quickly, and then
three
a quick
hour
race.
launch for most servers.
Yeah, really, the big standouts were like the stuff that happened in Velious, God, the changeover to Wild Treasures, and then ultimately the implosion that happened in the Buried Sea. That was kind of precipitated by us reinviting Milan into the guild despite my
Oh,
protests.
wow, really? Just before we jump into that, though, was TSS and DODH and POR, was that all just like a clean sweep for you guys?
I'd have to like look at the rankings, but I want to say it was. I don't recall
Seems like
any of
POR
that
is
being
where like
difficult.
Dima's political strengths would make you guys vulnerable, right?
He tried to. That's when he formed the Alliance of Guilds to try to take all the progression targets on launch night, like the Dragon Bones or Bazu Bones or whatever out of the Devastation. Getting Porthio would effectively have locked us out of the progression for like a week. But they didn't get any of those. And so we ended up beating POR as well first.
Yeah, that's crazy to me that they like there's three targets in Devastation, and you couldn't just roulette and land on one that your whole alliance could win a DPS race on.
Well, so about that, there was one that they got to first that we didn't engage. Like we were busy in what's the zone inside of the Devastation?
Spherag.
Spherag. Yeah, we were in Spherag engaged on that guy, and then the big guy outside in Devastation like spawned a little late while we were in there, and so OGC and their alliance engaged him. But at the time, and this may still be the case, it didn't matter who killed the mob. What mattered is who opened the chest, because the chest wasn't locked to anyone.
Oh
So I had
no,
a
you scummed them big time.
I did scum them big time. I had a macro set up to just slash open 5 times, and I was just standing under him, spamming the macro, spamming tab, and as soon as he died, I popped the chest, and that was all we needed to do. We didn't have to kill the mob. And so at that point, we just started zoning people out and assigning the bone shards to them. And, they got no loot for their kill. They didn't get any progression pieces.
Now I know that's like pretty low on the tier of how low you can go with competition, but there was there was a prior basis for this, right? Didn't Dima kill some of your wraiths on the Emp kill?
Yes, he did. He had, I don't know if it was mages or wizards set up with instant nuke items and just nuked a few of our wraiths away, and so we lost some planes rifts that way that otherwise we would have had.
So this is kind of like turnabout as fair play. Came back to bite him here.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if that actually affected the AHR server first kill or not, but probably didn't hurt.
Right. Yeah. Like those rifts are big. He only drops 40 per kill. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, and that was also a failure on like the people we had assigned to killing them. Like I don't remember if it was an enchanter or whatever, but they just targeted the wrong one. They didn't have an instant clicky ready to go on their hotbar.
right.
So they were just like searching through their bags for it like they would have all the time in the world.
I remember we had a DPS race against Gig in Luckland for Emp. And when Emp was at like 5%, I had people like, I'm like, hey, run to these spots where the wraiths are going to spawn. You need to kill them. Like, that's the most important thing that could happen here.
Yeah, we had gone through all that. We even had people like set up on test, and the same people that were supposed to be killing it during the live run had done it on test. I just don't know what happened between test and the live that they just slowed down to that extent, but it ended up costing us a few rifts in the process.
Yeah. Dang. All right. So you guys won POR that way. TSS just no competition. That's a one where, it could go a lot of different ways. Two hold progression lines and everything.
Yeah, there was definitely the start of competition. Like OGT was factioning really hard in Ashen Gate off the bat, but and then would contest us a bit in Direwind when we everyone needed Telgrith to spawn, and there was like a bonus rare event, so he wasn't spawning, and we ended
Right.
up
Because he's not rare
using
flagged, which is super shit.
we used a GM connection um, to kind of get him to start spawning in pick zones instead of the base pick. So we got him there. OGC didn't know about that, so they kept just trying to spawn him in the base pick for hours and hours afterwards. Like there was a joke where there was this paladin off tanking Kendra the Archer for literally probably 3 hours because they were trying not to kill her, thinking that if she was up, Telgrith had a better chance of spawning.
Right. Which is not true, by the way. Negreth showed us the spawn table for Telgrith. So,
Yeah, yeah, all that wasted effort. So yeah, we beat TSS without too much fuss, other than the bugged out NPC kind of deciding the race in our favor.
yeah.
Yeah,
For
could have gone
TSS
either
launch,
way, really.
did Quorum happen at this point? Or that the Quorum server, or was that not yet?
I think Quorum was like all the way back in Velious, actually.
Okay, so you guys had Quorum pots, right? Did you use them here?
They were probably used in Omens of War, if I had to guess. For
Hmm.
a lot of people, I know that was an expansion that we were highly encouraged to get to 70 ASAP to start farming signets.
Oh, I
And
remember. No, Quorum. The Quorum thing came with like a faction potion too. That's what I was wondering.
yeah, we used the faction potion
Probably DON.
DON on someone.
Yeah. So on Mischief for TSS launch, they've added the Quorum bag to the store. You know what I'm talking about? It's like $40.
Yeah, oh yeah, they know what they're doing. They know how to make some money.
We had two raids. One raid was going the Ashen Gate side. One raid was going the Frost Crypt side. For our Ashen Gate side, we bought every single person in the raid, except for 9 piggy slots. Um, we bought them Quorum bags so that our entire raid would have double faction.
I don't have that deep of wallets.
Yeah, it was like we basically were like, hey, could you do this? And if you said no and you wanted to be on that raid, the officers would just kind of spread the love and try to pay for people.
Hey, that's pretty big of you guys. I don't think I could ever stomach spending that much money on my internet buds unless like they were really close to me.
Just wanted to like leave no prisoners, so to speak. So then we ended up killing Lethar and Beltron within like 2 minutes of each other.
Hmm.
And then the Lethar
Nice.
raid came through and finished Frost Crypt, just so no one could be like, oh, you don't have any characters who completed both raid progression lines. It doesn't count. We didn't want to have room for that,
Yeah, no asterisks.
right? So you guys won TSS, then you go into TBS, and this is where it all ends. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so the TBS ending actually kind of started in TSS. Like I mentioned, Milan came back to the guild under a different name. In TSS, he joined us under the name Xeon, Xeon, as I want to say that was a mage, and he had a shaman named Freon. And he actually went to like small man raids with me and Astral and Kellen and those guys, like Toreador. Like we would do small, like, you know, 18 man raids of older content just to get like augs and things like that. And he would show up and he was pretty chill. But there were a couple times he would talk in Discord or whatever we were using by
He's got a really
accident.
signature, like kind of gravelly voice, right?
He has a stutter.
Okay.
He has a very specific stutter, and he talked a couple times by accident, and I caught it. So I sent it to Astral, like, this dude's definitely Milan. I can tell from the way he's talking. And he's like, nah, dude, there's no way. There's no way he came back. And if it is, then so what? And it's like, this is a really bad idea. He's here for a reason. And that reason ended up being, I don't know if he had planned this or if it was just like he took the opportunity that was given to him. So we're in the Buried Sea. We're raiding Solteris. In our instance, I'm pretty sure OGC is in their instance at the exact same time. We're at the first event, the Three Sisters, and it's not going great.
Oh, yeah, he pocketed one of the items, didn't he?
So yeah, we killed one of the sisters or whatever it was, maybe two of them. And the first time we do it, we assign an item to Astral, and he goes to loot it at the advanced loot window, and he just crashes, and he's just gone. So and like by the time he can log back in, the event's gone too long. It goes into the fail state or whatever it does, and so we have to restart. So we're already down one attempt, and like that attempt was okay, and it was going to be like a first attempt, so we didn't pop everything, and then we go for the second attempt because we knew this was going to be the event that was probably the hardest for us.
It's a DPS race, and you probably don't have your whole raid in there.
No, yeah, everyone's like people are still getting through their flagging.
Right.
And the second time, similar thing happens where an item is accidentally assigned to Xeon or Freon, whichever character it was. And, we're like telling him really quickly in Discord, like, hey, loot that, give it to this NPC, quick, quick, quick. And instead, he just slash Qs on us. And this attempt, we had popped like everything. All the discs were burned, like we were in full go mode. And by slash queuing out, we lost like another attempt's worth of stuff and all of our burn discs. And at that point, we're now like 30 minutes, maybe an hour behind OGC in Solteris.
Right. They're
We
probably
haul
like
butt.
pushing towards a Styre.
Yeah, I mean, we did everything we could, but at the end, they beat two gods before us and won the expansion. And I think like at that point, Astral was the guild leader, or if not in name, like in actuality, he was the guild leader.
Yeah.
And I think the whole him crashing and then uh, Milan taking off with that item and then losing the expansion. Like Astral was there to win expansions, and once he lost, it was kind of all over.
Yeah.
So he's like, "All right, I'm done. I'm not leading this guild anymore. If y'all want to keep going, go for it. But I'm not going to be a part of it."
I had
And
heard that Astral was basically carrying the guild for a couple expansions at that point. Like he was the workhorse doing all the planning and the work and stuff behind the
yeah,
scenes.
Astral was the secret workhorse for the longest time, probably all the way from like Kunark until the Buried Sea. He would spend like the entire night tracking NPCs. There were plenty of times it'd be 3 o'clock, 4 in the morning, where Astral and I are just having a conversation about mobs that are up in Sevu, and like I wish we could bat phone this, but we got to wait a couple hours. Har har. So like
Yeah.
that's why me and Astral are kind of like old buddies from way back because we went through it together.
Yeah, I have to say about Astral, like having been in guild with him and competed with him multiple times on different servers, I really can't say enough good things about him. He's like a top-notch player. He's never got a bad attitude. He's just great.
Yeah, he's a great person to play with. He's very good at the game. That's why he's been rating in ROI and TLP servers for like 10 years now,
Yeah.
doing both. The only negative I would say about Astral is, again, that whole competitive spirit. Once he loses, he gets real pissy and he can just vanish. It's like if ROI started losing, he might want to join a different guild,
Yeah.
but you know,
I was
he's not.
surprised.
he's
That
not like Griswold.
right.
He's not gonna tell the whole guild they're a bunch of N words and log off, never to be seen again. He's just gonna be like, he's the disappointed dad. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed in you guys.
Yeah. I was really surprised that Astral stuck around and by extension Gig continued to exist after they lost God. I know when they lost God, they said like, "Oh, this will never happen again." Then they lost Omens and then Don, and then I was always like, "Okay, they're gonna crumble any day now." But they decided to just be like, "Hey, we're gonna go hard, but we're not gonna like stay up all night." And it I don't know, it worked for them. So
Yeah.
they don't race, but they're still like a top 3 guild.
Yeah, I think Astral has mellowed out a little bit and finds most of his enjoyment through like the small man stuff that they do on the side. If I was coming back to Mischief and I've tried, that's the stuff that I would probably want to do, is just hanging out with my buddies and boxing raids down, and
Yeah, I think
a
that'd be
lot
cool
less
not having to
pressure
worry
on you.
about like the pressure of the randoms.
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much my history on Phinigel. After Wild Treasures imploded in the Buried Sea, I did go on to join OGC
Trader.
and raided. Yeah, I bent the knee. I raided Siltaris with them a few times on my Berserker. Got my uh, sword, whatever it was, and then I went and did like the Secrets of Fedor test raids with them. But ultimately decided that almost nobody else from Wild Treasures came over to OGC. At least none of the people that I played with. And I didn't want to make new friends. I didn't want to learn a whole guild's like character sort of thing. And ultimately just decided that if there weren't gonna be races, there just wasn't enough for me to keep playing.
Right. Yep. So you didn't actually make it to SOF launch, right?
I don't believe so. No, I think I
Now,
only did the test raids.
just to finish off the story for the viewers and everything, I think pretty much like usual, the rest of the story of Finny is like OGC wins, and there wasn't any significant drama. I think the only big guilds, like there were still like 10 guilds that existed in SOF, but it would slowly get trimmed down. EOE was big, OGC was big. Rosengard stayed around the entire time, all the way to live, and so did Resolute. Those were the 3 guilds. OGC, Resolute, and Rosengard made it to live, I want to say,
Hmm.
but I think Rosengard wasn't able to like clear expansion content anymore, so they were kind of like dithering, and Resolute ended up having to team up with OGC. So that's pretty much how that server went. Are you familiar with Myrtis, Bobby?
I know that it's really, really hard. I never actually did the raid myself.
So that was like the big raid where I guess OGC and Resolute had to team up as like a server raid, come together to beat it on like the last day of the expansion because they were otherwise not going to beat it. And after that, it was just walking all the way to live. Now OGC is a live guild. I think they're like a top 20 or top 30 guild or something like that. They're not a day one guild.
Mm. I mean, that's awesome that Resolute made it the whole way. I didn't know that. They're definitely I would say, an underdog in that respect, that they would go that far. I'm not really surprised that Rosengard stuck around because, they were the only Euro guild really after the first couple expansions. So they always had a demographic they could recruit from that the other guilds really couldn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, it's kind of crazy because usually the Euro guilds die out way earlier than that. But I've always heard
Yeah.
nothing but good things about Rosengard, and that's like usually Bonalgon or whatever leading that.
Yeah, the Bonalgon editions of Rosengard I've never had a problem with. Mafaka editions have been a little bit more
Oh yeah,
crazy,
yeah,
just because Mafaka is a crazy dude.
yeah. All right, Bobby. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. Do you have anything you want to put out before we close off the Discord, or sorry, the podcast?
No, all I'll say is, remember that everyone out there is a person, and that they have their reasons for doing what they're doing. They're going to be affected by your actions, and they'll probably remember them. And I don't remember a lot of the good times in EverQuest, but I definitely remember the bad times. So I think the drama is actually what kind of keeps this game going, because I don't know if you've noticed, but the forums are so boring lately because there is not enough going on Oakwind. What we need are more open world guilds messing with each other and less of this hand-holdy first engage stuff.
There's been big drama on Mischief. I feel like pretty much start to finish so far, but I have really wanted to take a policy of like, don't give any positive attention or negative attention to competitors. So I just like I don't start any forum drama anymore.
I miss
Um,
it.
I mean, and it does make for a boring thing, but I don't want to drive recruitment to competitors. So it's like,
Yeah, I miss the old days, but I understand that it's starting to die off and the game's changed.
yeah, definitely. Over the years, the meta with AOCs has taken it to a less dramatic turn. Bobby, do you want to give a shout out to your Twitch stream where people can find you and stuff?
I mean, I have a Twitch stream, twitch.tv/Bobbybick, but I honestly barely ever use it at this point. It's kind of a running joke amongst the few people that care because, I'm a family man now. I've got a regular job and no time for all that foolishness anymore.
All right, Bobby. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was great. This is our longest podcast episode, so I'm glad you were able to stick it out for the whole thing. And I really appreciate you coming on.
Not at all. I'm glad to be here, and I hope to see everyone next year at the SOE Live to celebrate the 25th anniversary.
Wait, is there really going to be an SOE live?
Hey, I can't confirm nor deny that.
Oh my goodness. I hope so. I'll be there. Hey, if you're still listening, make sure you check the description of the video. We have a link tree down there. There's a bunch of shit you could do, like links to Twitch's, YouTube's, Instagrams, Discords. But I would like to point out that we have a link to Extra Life, where we're part of the Dark Pod Games Extra Life team this year. So please consider contributing to that if you have the means. It goes a long way to help some kids and stuff. So with all that said, see you on the next episode. DramaQuest out.